You're listening to the Two Mics on TalkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged.
Enjoy.
Good evening, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the Two Mics. We managed to reach the studios on time tonight, which is better than we managed yesterday, of course. Coming up on the show today, we're going to be ordering food that's been left behind at restaurants all over London. We'll be finding out why so many pubs are closing down because of the property boom. We'll be finding out what Jeremy Corbyn's got up his sleeve digitally. And of course, it's Ask Porky as well, the only place to get answers to all those problems you've never been able to solve. Tweet us at the Two Mics or find our Facebook page. You're listening to the Two Mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. And we are here all week between 7 and 10 in the evening. It's time to say a very good evening to Mr. Mike, a Porky, a Parry. Very good evening to you, Mr. Parry.
And a very good evening to you, MG. And it's good to be here again on Talk Radio. Another
slightly less harassed than last night.
Slightly less harassed, you're absolutely right. And we've got a fizzing firework of a show ahead of us. Now, I must make it absolutely clear that I start here with the campaign of the night, which is against flip-flops.
Yes.
People wearing flip-flops in normal, everyday business. A liability.
It's a growing concern.
It's outrageous. Yeah. People should not expose their feet in public.
Do you think it's a non-sock issue as well?
Of course it's a non-sock issue, but it's more just an idle issue. It's a lazy issue, and it's a kind of, look how trendy I am issue. Yeah. I was walking behind a bloke today, okay? Yeah. And London is a fast-moving town.
You must have been quite close to him if you stood on his flip-flop.
No, well, I'm telling you, London is a fast-moving town. Yeah. So if I'm moving at a faster pace than the person in front of me, sometimes you come up very close to them.
Yeah, but you see, that's a personal space issue, which I would have a problem with as well.
Yeah, but in a crowded railway station, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. Right, so the guy in front didn't remove his left leg from where it was on the floor quickly enough. Yeah. I trod on his flip-flop. Yeah. But that
means you were awfully close to him.
It doesn't. If you think about it, if my left foot was extended and his left leg was behind him, I wasn't close to him at all. It's just that he'd lifted his heel.
Well, you must be within a yard of him. You're within a yard of him.
No. Well, maybe a yard, yeah. And the front toe piece of his shoe then rested on the back of his flip-flop. Yeah. So he then almost stumbles, turns round, starts trying to give me a hard time. And I said, don't you start on me, pal. Yeah. I said, you shouldn't be walking around in flip-flops. I said, they're dangerous, they're unhealthy, and you're a jerk. And I walked off.
And what did he do then? Well, it's the sort of thing that'd get you into trouble, though.
Well, no, he was having a go at me, and it was his fault. He'd caused the problem.
But you could have sort of flip-flop rage or something. I mean, the guy might turn around and smack you.
I think other people should have flip-flop rage, because what I think is, it's ludicrous. And do you know why? Another reason why I bumped into him. If you've got a sensible pair of shoes on, like I always wear, if I'm, going about my business.
But if you're wearing shorts, for example, which I presume he was.
He was, you're absolutely, and a vest, by the way. And a singlet vest.
Yeah, that's another thing you don't like.
Yeah. And a rucksack, by the way.
A rucksack too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, but if you're wearing, shorts, you're then going to wear sort of boat shoes, or you're going to wear tennis shoes or sneakers or something like that.
That's up to the individual.
But you're not going to wear brogues and a pair of socks, are you?
That's up to the individual. But what I'm saying is, I had spotted this guy about 3 yards away from him, urging him to get out of my way because I was busy. No. And the thing is, he was walking at a very slow pace because you know what he was doing?
What was he doing?
He was using his big toe and his second toe to curl around the one bit of rubber that a flip-flop hangs onto your foot on. And he was having to walk very slowly because he clearly didn't have a comfortable relationship with his footwear.
Well, you can't walk that quickly with flip-flops.
Of course you can't. That's what I'm saying. Flip-flops are for ambling along the, what do we call it in America? The sidewalk. Not the sidewalk. The
boardwalk.
The boardwalk, thank you. Ambling along the boardwalk next to the beach.
Or something.
Or the Costa Brava or something like that. They are not for a busy railway station in the middle of one of the biggest metropolises in the world.
Your feet would get
where
filthy
people are
as well,
moving around. Your feet get filthy. You're a filthy person. If you wear flip-flops, then I'm sorry, but there's something wrong, missing. If your head and your brain is a jigsaw puzzle, you've got a piece of your puzzle missing, pal, if you're walking around in flip-flops.
Well, there are certainly places where you'll see, even in sort of coastal resorts, you'll see no flip-flops. Please wear shirts at all sorts of times.
Quite right,
absolutely. They don't want you in the bar or in the restaurant if you're just wearing flip-flops.
I think it's outrageous, honestly, and I think there should be some sort of a law against it. Like, for instance, I would never allow any person into my shop.
I thought you were a bit of a libertarian, though.
I would never allow anybody into my shop who didn't have a shirt on. Yeah. I'd be very loath to allow them into my shop if they had a single, singlet-type thing on.
You know, when I was in Mallorca, there were people going into supermarkets without shirts on.
Right.
Which I thought was pretty disgusting.
And do they allow that, though?
They apparently did,
Disgusting. Supposing a bead
Standing
of perspiration
standing by the fresh
Yeah,
vegetables.
exactly. Supposing a bead of perspiration comes off your body, you'd have to close the whole store down because it's contaminated, isn't it?
Well,
contaminated.
It's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
It's
good. But anyway, look,
I mean, I'm with you. I can see how you get upset
Yes.
by these things, and
Yes.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. But I think you start making laws about it, because when you start making laws about it,
Well,
then you get mad council people coming around fining people for wearing flip-flops.
Well, I'm not sure that
I
I'd
wouldn't
be
want
against that. I'm not sure I'd be against that. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see more understanding of social grace.
Yeah.
Social grace is the way to do it. People who walk around in flip-flops...
A bit of etiquette.
Yeah, are arrogant individuals. They're either arrogant or they're thick, okay? Arrogance...
Or maybe they just want to have cool feet.
No. You don't get cool feet. You get messy, dirty, filthy feet, and you are a nuisance to society. And you've got to remember, I've had campaigns like this before, and I've won them. So we can win this one, okay?
I can't remember the last campaign you won.
Well, I have, believe me, on social media.
I mean, you've had campaigns against rucksackers, which are still very high on your list of people that should be taken away somewhere.
Or charged double to travel on public transport because they take up twice as much space.
You're not keen on cyclists. You was explaining to Victoria there, just before she went home, even though she's cycling home to Hackney, that you're not keen on cyclists.
Yes, but Victoria looks like a responsible young woman who cycles in the right sort of fashion. She says she doesn't use cycle lanes because there aren't anywhere she goes.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that.
Well, that's the irony of the whole cycling lane argument.
Of course.
Where most places you go, there aren't any cycle lanes.
No, I'm all for cyclists because I think that if you want to use your bodily strength to propel yourself from A to B, that's a very, very good thing.
Yeah.
What I disagree about with cyclists is the arrogance of the cycling lobby who have taken £500 million out of the economy of London to build them special routes, which A, they don't seem to be using very much, and B, are questionable in their use to the economy of this city.
Imagine a cyclist wearing flip-flops and a rucksack.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be the triple whammy for you, wouldn't it?
Certainly would be,
You'd just have to push them into the hedge.
But anyway, look...
Did you see that story, by the way, today about somebody's hedge being stolen? Apparently this is the new thing. People come in and steal hedges. Yeah,
they don't actually steal the hedge. They stole 60 conifer trees, which make up the hedge.
Well, yeah, but the hedge effectively has disappeared.
Well, it has, indeed. I mean, this has happened to me. I had a house once down in Stockbroker Belt, actually, funny enough. In fact, I think I've still got it, actually.
Have you?
And,
well, you rent it out.
Yes. And
this is part of the answer of the question that will never be answered.
Yeah, well, exactly. And what happened was, the first thing I did when I got in there is that new houses these days don't come with a garden.
Yeah.
They come with it's a battlefield. Honestly, they leave half-broken bricks, broken
they just chuck
sinks.
Stuff there, yeah.
Yeah, they do, honestly, when they move out, and then it's up to you to garden it. So the first thing I did was I laid a lawn.
Yeah.
Then I realised this was not such a good idea because the drainage situation didn't seem to be that good and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So I then had a bloke come in and replace the lawn with...
A patio.
They're absolutely right. And they had to dig a big 6-foot deep hole.
You've still got to do drainage all around that.
No. They dig a big 6-foot deep hole in the middle of what used to be the lawn.
Yeah.
And it's quite circular. It's the size of King Arthur's Round Table in its circumference, right?
Right.
And then they build the patio flags towards that. You see what I mean? And put a drain on top of it.
Okay.
It's very well done, and that drains off. Having said that, what happened then was I thought, now I need some cover for the side of the garden.
Right. So there was no fence or anything.
Well, there was a brick wall up to about 4 feet and then nothing.
Right.
But the brick wall up to 4 feet went to the next level of the development. So if you see what I mean, I had a level playing field 4 feet up. You see what I mean?
Right.
And there was only just like a chicken wire fence there. No, it's no good for me.
No.
So I
planted.
You can't
just buy an instant hedge, can you?
You can't. Yeah, I think I bought 30 trees.
Right.
And
that's a bit expensive.
Fast growing, and within 18 months I had a beautiful hedge.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And once they interlock together, you can't steal them.
And is this the thing that people are stealing, though?
Yeah, but they steal them when they're young, you see, because they're just saplings then, and they take them all away.
How much are they worth then? Are they worth a lot of money?
I think they
hundreds, thousands.
Well, I think they, if you buy them from a garden centre, I think they cost about £85 each.
Right.
So 60 at 85.
60.
10. Yeah, he lost about 60 trees. This guy. So that's 650. So it's about £5,000.
That's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Worth stealing.
Yeah.
No wonder they're doing it.
Yeah.
No wonder they're doing it. Now, coming up in this show tonight, we're going to be talking to lots of different people. We're going to talk to a guy called Ian Silvera, senior politics reporter at International Business Times, because you might have seen today Jeremy Corbyn launched his digital manifesto. Yeah. And he's already been getting pelters from people because he hasn't thought about online abuse. Apparently, it doesn't seem to make any sense.
Right.
People are very unsure about what exactly
I don't
he's talking
really
about.
understand this, you know.
Well, no, I know you don't. Well, I know that
I'm glad our experts come coming on to explain.
Well, I can talk you through it. It's why, because because you and I have different skills, you see, and I can explain to you precisely what he should have said. Yeah. But one of the problems that you will understand that he had is that when he was giving his digital manifesto, he was live streaming it, right, so that people could watch it from afar all over the country, and it broke down. So that's not a very good start, is it? If you're going to digitally stream something live, then you better make sure it works. Also, we will be talking as well about what happened, what's happening in the papers tomorrow. Danny Kelly's going to join us, TalkSport host, former editor of NME.
We're going to look forward to Friday, which is the anniversary of the Fire of London.
That's right.
And also, we're going to discuss the situation regarding the Red Baron, who's the most famous fighter pilot of all time.
I suppose he is.
Because 100 years from tomorrow, he shot down his first victims. And when I say victims...
When you say victims, his adversaries, surely.
They were two men in the Royal Flying Corps, as it was in those days. There was no RAF. It was a branch of the army. Right. And one was a Welshman, and one was an Englishman.
Really?
And so this week there's going to be an anniversary between the three families. How about that?
That's
German,
very interesting.
English, Welsh.
Yeah, fantastic. Tom Stainer's going to join us from camera. I almost got a job with them once.
Oh, right, okay. So you're going to talk to us about all these pubs closing down?
Pubs closing down, yeah, because of the
not for the normal reason. Not for the normal reason. The normal reason is, they're too expensive to run these days and beer's becoming too cheap in supermarkets. This is because the people who own the property the pubs are in are closing them down to turn them into flats.
Exactly.
Because you make more money out of a block of flats than you do out of a pub.
Yeah. Exactly right. And Ken Lovett's going to join us about Mr. Chapman as well, Mark Chapman, who was refused parole for the 9th time.
Excellent.
The guy who killed John Lennon.
Yeah.
Because we always talk about something to do with the Beatles on the show. It is getting a little bit late, though. We will keep you updated with all the news that's happening, too. And, of course, it's Ask Porky. So if you've got a question that you want answered, you've got a quandary that you want quelled, this is the place to do it. Just hashtag it Ask Porky and send it at the Two Mics, and we'll sort that out later on.
You're listening to the Two Mics on TalkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show, as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. We are the Two Mics. We've got loads coming up, fully booked in this show. We've got lots and lots of your tweets as well. Here's one from Patrick who says, I think the show needs a daily update of Parry's commute. First the rucksackers, now the flip-flop. Yes. Hashtag sidewalk rage.
Yeah, well, it's not sidewalk rage. It's social graces. That's what I'm against. I'm against people with bad manners. And for a guy to start, flipping his flops in my face when I'm behind him is not good enough.
Yeah, it's all right, fair enough. Well, we'll get back to that in a minute because we've got a very important man to talk to now.
Excellent.
Ian Silvera, senior politics reporter at the International Business Times.
Brilliant.
Because Jeremy Corbyn, of course, who's always being kind of, not being accused of, but who's always, his supporters were always saying he's always being picked on by the likes of us and what they call the mainstream media for messing things up. But he has messed something else up. And we're going to talk to Ian now about it. It's his digital manifesto.
Okay.
Ian, a very good afternoon, a very good evening to you, I should say. How are you?
Yeah, good evening. I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us. Now, the problem with Jeremy Corbyn is that whenever something goes wrong, he and his followers and his people that support him seem to think that he's getting unfairly picked on. But he has been picked on quite substantially by almost everybody who saw this digital manifesto being unfurled, hasn't he?
Yeah, I wouldn't say picked on. I would say it's rigorous, scraping through the details of this digital manifesto. Not least, and I'm sure we come on to this in a bit, the author, Richard Barbrook, who's proving to be a controversial figure.
Right, well, Richard Barbrook, this is the guy who has been put in charge of his kind of digital affairs, right? This is a guy who believes that he's got something to offer, not just Jeremy Corbyn, but the entire world in democratising the internet.
Indeed, and some of the choice things that is coming out is that he's tweeted stuff, I obviously not going to repeat it, but he's told Blair I'd say run a rubbish Remain campaign and should shut up, basically, but in more stronger language than that, among other things.
Right.
And, he sort of describes himself as a sort of digital communist and all this, and there's various things that he's come out over Twitter saying, and he's said that Labour's anti-Semitism issues is actually the demonisation of the Palestinian cause.
Right.
So that's just some of the choice things that he's come out with.
Yeah, this is all a bit deep and gruesome. This in. I mean, I want to know what this expression "we are going to democratise the internet" means. What that means is that the internet is too free a speech platform for most people who don't want free speech, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's sort of vacuous in a sense, isn't it? Because at the moment, I suppose the internet is full of free speech. I mean, some of the stuff that he's proposed, for instance, is a digital passport.
Yeah.
Now, that the warning there is that it could become a central government database, and therefore it's just going to attract hackers, and they're going to try and steal people's personal information. Another thing that he's proposed is a broadband rollout across the whole of the UK, which is a bit of a vote winner, to be honest, particularly with small and medium-sized enterprises.
Yes.
But it's going to cost an awful lot of money. He's costed it, and fair play, he has costed it, at £25 billion.
So just the odd 24 billion, yeah.
But hasn't he also
been
been
submarine with that?
Yeah, hasn't he also been criticised as well, though, Ian, because he did not vote against what the government wanted to do some months ago, when they were basically collecting loads of data on individuals privately anyway. So while on the one hand he wants to change everything, when he had the opportunity to vote against something that would have changed everything, he didn't do it.
Yeah, no, that's dead on in the sense that he has not gone against the Snoopers Charter, which is this massive controversial piece of legislation from the government, which, human rights organisations and the like have come out against. So as you say, on the one hand, he says he wants to democratise the internet, but actually when the proof of the pudding is put forward in front of Mr Corbyn, it doesn't seem to be there with his actions. So it's all well and good launching a manifesto, promise these things, but as you sort of mentioned there, he hasn't sort of proven it in his own voting record.
No, and I mean, I know that, again, Corbyn's supporters, I've already got one here tweeting me from Glasgow saying, Viva Corbyn, are you guys still not believers? Put your head out the window. Can't you feel the wind of change? Well, actually, no.
Frankly, I can't.
I can't feel the wind of change. When you are, I mean, it's a bit like when you're in Facebook and you are surrounded by people who think exactly like you do. The people who support Corbyn think that everyone thinks like them, and everyone else is, of course, the enemy. But there's not as many of them as there are of people who are not, quite as enthusiastic. But even Chris Bryant, who's an MP for the Labour Party, says that Corbyn's missed the point because he failed to mention the need to curb online abuse, not least in the current situation where several MPs, particularly women MPs, have been threatened by death threats.
No, yeah, and I thought that was an open goal. I know a lot of my other colleagues who are journalists as well have sort of voiced that as well, of what Mr Bryant has said there, because of course we've had an anti-Semitism inquiry, we've had these various incidents of harassment online, and really with a digital manifesto you would have thought that would have been part of Corbyn's policies. But in his defence, I know we've sort of been fairly negative, but he does have a strong social media presence, and his team, Jeremy for Labour, they're now called, obviously previously called Momentum, have been able to harness that to get people out to these big rallies, get people engaged with Corbynista politics, not UK-wide politics. And I suppose what some Labour people would say is, well, why didn't they do that during the referendum campaign for Remain?
Well,
it does seem Corbyn's able to mobilise people via the internet.
Yeah, well, that may be the case.
That is the problem, Ian. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us.
I see there's a mention there of unjustified surveillance by CCTV.
Yeah.
Have you already mentioned that?
No, we haven't.
I didn't think you had, no. And obviously that's got to be an open door for all his opponents to come back and say, what, because you were caught sitting on the floor on the train by CCTV?
You might say that he was the victim of that, won't you?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, people have been moaning about CCTV surveillance for years.
But there's no problem with CCTV.
There isn't a problem.
If you're not doing anything wrong, what's the problem with CCTV?
Well, exactly. And also they've been able to sort a few things out. There was a time when the CCTV wasn't very good, but it's getting better now. And if you are looking for a reason to try and track somebody down who's committed a crime, then you don't
want people urinating in doorways in this country.
Don't you?
So CCTV is a good thing.
Well, you want to prosecute people for doing that as well?
Well, I think we have to. What have I told you about flip-flops? What have I told you? Social...
Very difficult if you want to do that.
Social courtesies.
Social courtesies, and sort of etiquette and that kind of thing. Yeah, but you wouldn't want to do that as well if you were wearing flip-flops, would you? Urinating in the doorways, your feet would get
people
wet.
Probably will. I'm getting a few texts and emails from people who are defending the flip-flop brigade. Alex says, I carried my flip-flops in my backpack while cycling to work this morning. Will I go to hell? hell. Well, no, you're going to hell, but I mean, at least
you just don't want to be running into Mike Parry.
At least you only got to wear them when you get there. Another one here, Porky. I literally live in flip-flops. Do you? His name is Ross, but he's got a picture of himself with a horse. So I don't know how you can wear flip-flops on the back of a horse.
No, I don't know how you can.
Impossible.
Here's one from Ian. He says, I live in flip-flops, but then I live in tropical Cairns in Australia, not London.
Well,
horses
that's all right.
for courses, mate.
That's all right.
Porky should have a word with Jason Cundy, says Jane. He's an avid flip-flop wearer.
Yeah.
That's actually true. We've got a little poll going on as well. So if you go to Twitter and pick up the talk, I'll just retweet it actually on 2 mics as well. We're asking you if you agree with Mr. Parry. He wants to ban flip-flops in any non-flip-flop wearing scenario. What do you think?
In any non-flip-flop wearing scenario? Yes, of course I'm with you.
Anything that would normally be a place where you would not wear them. Well, i.e. not on the beach.
Look, if you're on St. Lucia, where I once went, and I remember wearing flip-flops all the time, I was paddling around the hotel and the swimming pool and the beach and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. Yeah. But you don't wear them in the middle of Waterloo Station in London when people are trying to move around. Don't you understand that when you're at work in a big commuter situation, you don't do things like stop and stand at the top of an escalator. Yeah. You don't do things like wear flip-flops to slow yourself down as you're moving around a station. Yeah. You don't do things like not move when I want to move because you're getting your bag off the rack and all this kind of stuff.
You basically want everyone to keep out of your way.
No,
really,
you have to have a discipline, and it's called work discipline.
Is that right?
Not leisure discipline. Okay. Leisure discipline is totally different.
Well, here we go. So far on the flip-flop debate, banned a lot of them, gets 56%. Leave my flip-flops alone, only 44%.
Well, there you go.
It's early days, though. Early days.
I think you can say once again, the Portmeister, voice of the common man.
Yeah, voice of the common man, man of the people, the man who has so many houses he doesn't remember how many he's got, and he won't tell us either.
You're listening to the 2 mics on talkSPORT.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. We are the 2 mics. We've got Ask Porky coming up a little bit later on. Of course, Porky Vision tomorrow, the greatest TV review you've ever seen. And we'll have a Porky quiz before the end of the week as well. Ian in Krakow has sent a picture in of a fantastic shop, which you would love. He says, Is this where Porky stocks up on his visits to his property empire in Krakow? And there it is. It's a Pierre Cardin shop.
That. Yeah, that's very good. Well done. That's in the same square, I think, believe it or not.
Well, where you've got a place.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's only kind of one square in Krakow. It's very big from one end to the other. But another one here. I love wearing my flip-flops. I'm dreading the cooler weather, says Sushi.
Yes.
Sushi, that's a nice name.
Yes.
Yeah, and then somebody going on about how can you take Mr Corbyn seriously when he can't reserve a seat on a train?
Well, there is that problem,
isn't it? That's a bit political, isn't it,
well,
really?
It is a bit. Well, we can do politics on the show.
Yeah, but we are apolitical. We are apolitical.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm apolitical. No. I would say I'm not party political, which is not the same thing. Yes. But I'm not apolitical in the sense that, we're all affected by politics. Our lives are affected by them. I mean, you have to be very careful when you start calling for bans on things because you'll end up having some kind of totalitarian type state.
I don't want to ban on anything.
In North Korea, do you see where old Kim Jong-un has assassinated somebody again or executed them by the use of an anti-aircraft gun,
which he's done before, hasn't he? Yeah. But the other information that I loved seeing out of North Korea well, first of all, the ambassador who quit, who defected.
Yes.
The ambassador was the ambassador to London. He was the ambassador to London. Yeah. And they had that sort of weird house, didn't they? Somewhere in Ealing. Wasn't it? Wasn't that the embassy?
Was it Ealing?
I think it was Ealing,
yeah. I think it was somewhere sort of less than Mayfair, wasn't it?
Definitely less than Mayfair. So he could. Now, he's thought to have serviced in South Korea.
Yeah.
But you see what the national government in North Korea now say? First of all, he is human scum. That was the first one.
Yes.
Now he's a child molester who was fleeing the authorities. Yeah. He's also an international spy for the Americans and has been for years.
Yeah.
He's abused his own children. He's a bigamist and has married more than 2 women while in England under the influence of Western filth and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. Right. So he's having a good time. But the one I really liked was, it said they've laid another 1,000 mines in no man's land between North Korea and South Korea, Right. And they say this is because they want to keep the imperial dogs from the West out of their country. Yeah. The American expert says, no. He says so many North Korean soldiers have escaped across that no man's land to South Korea.
To stop them going.
Yeah, deserting the North Korean army. That he's got to keep them out. Yeah. Oh, well, he's a character.
But he certainly is.
Do you know the West don't really want rid of him because he is he's a very
convenient bogeyman, isn't he?
Convenient bogeyman. They can focus all their attention on one nutter to whom they've got to deal with.
Right.
So, for instance,
and he's not actually that dangerous.
No, exactly. He's a complete buffoon.
Yeah.
But every time he tries something else, the West think, "Oh, that's interesting. If somebody who had a brain did that, we'd have a problem."
Yeah, exactly. Or not so much a brain, but possibly a nuclear weapon.
A nuclear weapon.
Because most of the time when he fires his sort of rockets off somewhere, they just crash into the sea. Don't
That's right. Yeah.
Now, how about this from Neil? He says nothing wrong with t-shirts, shorts, and flip-flops at night following a bath or a shower, and you amble down to the local taverna, pub, or restaurant.
I totally disagree. Somebody ambled into my local taverna or restaurant. If it was in Rhodes in Greece, no problem.
Yeah.
If it was in Epping Forest, I'd want you to leave because you got obnoxious, odour-ridden feet, and you shouldn't be in there. There's a lovely picture here.
There could be an issue there, yeah.
Lovely picture here from Gaz B, and I have to say, I can forgive him for this one. He's got a pair of flip-flops. Look at those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're a pair of Spurs flip-flops.
Yeah, and that doesn't make them better.
It doesn't make them better, but I mean, at least there's a purpose for having them. Not just a pair of filthy flip-flops.
Well, you wouldn't want to wear those to go to a football match, though, would you?
No, of course I wouldn't, but I bet he doesn't either. He probably ambles around the house in them. It's fine.
William said, Porky says, I still had a house in the stockbroker belt. In fact, I still might have.
Yeah,
He's got so many houses, he can't recall
No, it's not that. It's all about portfolios and things like that. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
No, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
William says this, education is already on a downward spiral. Get rid of rucksacks carried by every school child, and homework. I don't know why he wants to get rid of homework, but it may be that there's more of that tweak to follow.
Oh dear, I don't know about that. Homework I always thought was good.
Well, do you know that most of the kids
in measures,
most of the kids who go to my kids' schools carry rucksacks, and they're so heavy because they're weighed down by books and stuff. They have to take books to school, which I find in this digital age quite extraordinary that they're still having to carry all these books around.
I was so bright, I didn't really have to do any homework.
Right.
I just picked up on Academica.
Yeah. Is this why you failed and dropped out of the College of Further Education that you were attending?
Well, no, not really. It's just that I found it so boring, And by the way, most students are deadbeat bums.
But you wouldn't accept, presumably, the fact that somebody knew more than you did, so the teacher was presumably to you already a pompous oaf.
Well, I never accepted in many situations that the teacher did know more than me. I mean, for instance, economics, right? I worked out at a very early age when I was doing economics A-level that economics was actually common sense on how the country works.
Yeah.
It was nothing to do with maths. It was nothing to do with figures. It was nothing to do about how strange economic theories like Keynesian.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I said. It wasn't about how that worked against, some other economic philosophy. It was literally all about what is the real cost of a price of milk. You know what I mean?
Well, it was about the elasticity of the cost of a price of
Yes,
milk.
it
surely.
was. I totally agree.
And the elasticity of the price of milk is based on a theory, which is what economics is. It's not about what the price of the milk is.
Yeah, the most brilliant...
So you're not listening to me, are you?
Yes, I'm listening
to you. No, you're not.
I am
I can tell you're not listening. You're just going, yeah. But you don't understand elasticity, do you?
I do understand elasticity,
well,
but I'm bright enough to be able to take in your argument in a split second and then move on.
Well, what is elasticity then?
Elasticity is all about the variable factors that come into the production and supply of goods in a free society.
Not necessarily.
It is.
Not when it's referring to the price of milk. The price of milk is dependent. The elasticity of the price of milk is dependent upon how much you can put it up, because of all the variants which are involved, not just
That's exactly what I just said.
No, it's not just in the making of the milk, but basically how much people will pay to have it.
I know, that's exactly what I said. And because of the elasticity problem with the price of milk, lots of dairy farmers going bust at the moment because they're being undercut
they say they're going
bust.
Of
milk to supermarkets.
No, but they say they're going bust, but they're not actually going bust. What they're doing is making more cheese.
Okay, so they've got to turn to cheese.
I mean, farmers are always telling us they're going bust, but they never seem to go out of business.
Farmers have been telling us they're going bust for 50 years.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid at the King's School Chester, and Cheshire is one of those arable type counties. What do they call them? Shire counties.
Shire county.
Lots of farmers sent their kids to my school. They seem to have a lot of money to send their kids to the school. They paid a lot of fees, and they always arrived in big cars.
Yeah.
Whenever we went to their place for a party or something like that, they had big spreads. Believe me, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Now, Mrs. Thatcher.
But they're always pleading poverty, though.
Yeah, people are always having a go at me, saying, why are you a Thatcherite? I'm not a Thatcherite. I just believe that Mrs. Thatcher's simple view on economics was the most sensible I've ever heard, and that was earn £10 a week, spend £9.95, joy.
Yeah.
Earn £10 a week, spend £10 and 5p, misery.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, unfortunately,
that's it. That's the economic plan in one.
Well, it actually isn't, because the trouble is, if you live like that, then there's no credit. and then nobody can afford to buy anything, and so the economy stagnates because they can't afford to buy the things that the people who sell you the credit want you to buy.
Yes.
Because without the credit, we would have no economy whatsoever.
Well, look, I understand that. Well,
that's completely different to what you just said.
Where do you think I got the money from to buy the odd property here?
Well, you must have borrowed it.
Well, of course. But it's called a mortgage, isn't it? You know.
But if you borrow money, then that Thatcherite model doesn't work.
No,
does it?
she was talking about the weekly household budget. All right, quite simply, this is it in its plainest form, right?
Yeah, but the weekly household budget for most people is now in terms of owing money is massive because they buy holidays which they can't afford to pay for. They buy cars which they can't afford to pay for, and they're in debt to the tune of about 25 grand.
No, you're confusing microeconomics with macroeconomics.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Afraid you are.
Same goes for the government. I mean, when was the last government that was actually in credit?
Well, there's never been a government in credit.
Right.
There's never been a
her
government
economic
in credit.
argument is actually worthless.
The last government actually was in credit was John Major's government in this country, but it wasn't in credit in terms of government debt. It was in credit in terms of not increasing the debt on an annual basis.
Right. So it's still in debt, though.
Still in debt, yeah. All governments have been in debt since day one.
Yeah.
You know, George Washington had to borrow money to
the guy with the wooden teeth.
The guy with the wooden teeth, which he got from the battlefield of...
you said Waterloo.
Waterloo, that's right, yeah, the battlefield of Waterloo. Yeah, still go with that.
Yeah.
Still go with that, yeah.
Okay.
And George Washington had to borrow money from the French to fight the English, okay? So when he got into power, when he was the first president of the United States of America, George Washington, that's why he called Washington, D.C., for obvious reasons.
Is that right? Are you sure?
He inherited...
What about Washington State?
Washington State, that's on the other side of the country.
Yeah, it is. Was that named after him as well?
No, that wasn't named after him. No.
Was that just a coincidence?
It was just a coincidence, yeah. It's 50 states, so there's bound to be a coincidence here and there. And he started life, with the newest country in the world, which is then the United States, which, by the way, in those days didn't own Alaska, didn't own Texas, didn't own some of California,
right.
It was owned by Mexico and all that kind of stuff.
It was just the original 13, wasn't it, in those days?
It was indeed the original 13, you're quite right. And he started with a massive debt, and they've had a debt ever since.
Right.
See?
That's what I mean. So to talk about people living what you might call sensibly and spending less than they earn is a complete fallacy.
Yeah, well, anyway, look.
Nobody does that.
Look, we've talked far too much about economics, and you're going to bore the audience to death because, every time I tell you something that's right, you seem to want to sort of row back and say you're not sure it is.
I just want to make sure that you're not giving out false information and misleading the audience.
I don't give out false information.
Clearly, the people are waiting to be educated by you, but up to a point.
Yeah.
If you get it all wrong, then that's not a really good service.
No,
so we got loads of time to do loads of this, but we haven't got time now left because you've been rabbiting on about George Washington.
I haven't. No,
you have. With the two mics.
You're listening to the two mics on talkSPORT.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. We have the two mics for Ask Porky coming up a little bit later on in the show, of course. If you haven't heard it before, it is where Mike Parry puts on his agony uncle hat and tries to solve all your problems. It could be a financial problem, it could be a personal problem, it could be something you've just wanted the answer to and couldn't get it anywhere else. All you've got to do is tweet us at the two mics, and of course you can look for us on our Facebook page as well. We've got loads of good ones already, but if you want to get one in under the wire, it will be a little bit later on in the show. Sorry to tell you, Mr. Parry, that the Leave My Flip-Flops Alone Brigade have caught up a little bit.
Oh, really?
It's now 51 to 49%.
Well, I'm still ahead.
Quite a lot of people sending in pictures of flip-flops,
Yeah,
which look horrible, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Julia sent these in. I think with feet like these, flip-flops should be banned.
Yeah,
I don't know whose
agree.
feet she's showing, but
I say
they're not very nice.
I say vote Porky and vote often. And when I say vote Porky, that means vote for a ban on flip-flops, please, if you are a civilised person.
Derek says this, in Florida where I reside, it is all anyone wears, but in England I have to say no.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody here called Magpie, or whatever that is, says Porky is only bitter that flip-flops are not made wide enough for his fat feet.
Oh,
no,
that's
not
true.
the case at
You
all.
have said you've got quite broad feet.
Yeah, I've got broad feet because, that's the way that the feet are.
BMW says this, simpler just to ban Porky from the studio, everyone's a winner.
It's a bit harsh, isn't it?
It does seem a bit unfair.
Yeah.
Now, I was slightly troubled, I have to say, and I don't particularly wish to dwell on this, but when we were talking to James Max earlier, just before we took over from him, and he asked about your sleeping arrangements, and you made some remark about having to wear something to keep everything in place.
Yes.
I just wondered if you could elaborate on that without becoming too just graphic, really.
Well, you told me that was too much information already, and so I wanted to be as sort of vague as I could about it.
Well, without being specific, I mean, why would you feel like you have to do that, though?
Well, I prefer to wear clothes around my midriff when I am sleeping, because when you turn over, then everything which is not directly attached to your body...
Right.
sort of flops around a bit.
Yes,
I
understand. Yeah, I understand.
You understand?
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying.
But so how does wearing something stop it from doing that?
Because it holds it in one place.
Tight.
No, holds it in one. No, it's not tight. I mean, for instance.
So you're talking about like pyjama bottoms?
No, I'm talking about. What am I talking? I'm talking about. I've got pairs of very bright white. They're not boxers. They're tighter than boxers. What do you call them?
Briefs?
No, they're not briefs. No. They're like boxers in terms that they go halfway down your leg and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But
they're like briefs then.
No, they're called shorts. I think. Are they? Are they shorts?
I don't think so.
I think so. Anyway, the point is they are efficient in keeping the movement of extraneous appendages in place.
So do you turn over a lot then in bed?
Well, yeah, I do. Don't you?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I do, yeah. I turn over about every
last
4
night
minutes.
It was very warm,
Yes.
so I kind of found myself waking up about every hour and a half.
Well, that can happen.
And thinking I hadn't had a sleep at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
if I'd been wearing any clothes, it would have been very
that can happen. I tried pyjamas, actually, and I don't see the point of them at all.
No.
As far as I'm concerned, pyjamas just get ruffled up. They end up halfway up your leg or halfway up your
I
arm.
haven't had pyjamas since I was about 13, I don't think.
You don't have? You haven't?
No.
No, I haven't either. No, I totally agree.
I once had a nightshirt.
Did you?
Yeah, somebody brought me a nightshirt.
I can kind of see a bit of logic in that. See a bit of logic in that. But no, I have to say, I mean, George Best, I remember a famous quote from him once, said he'd never worn anything in bed in his life.
Really?
Yeah.
Which is unusual, though, isn't it? Because, I mean, when he was growing up, you wouldn't have thought people slept naked.
Well,
that would have been considered to be something that was the devil's spawn.
I've no idea. I mean, look, perhaps his mum made him wear pyjamas when he was little or something like that. But he said, since it was his decision, he's never worn it in bed in his life, So I can sort of understand that. But, no, I mean, I'm not sure why people are that interested in that because, it's everybody to their own choice, isn't it? It really is. You've seen the pictures of some of these people with flip-flops and the filthy feet they've got.
I know, it's horrible, isn't it?
I mean, I want to put this out. I'm going to retweet this because that absolutely, totally backs up my argument. There's people going around with bent feet. I'm going to.
Well, you see, they're not really.
This is from Julia, right?
Yeah, that's one of the ones I mentioned earlier. They're not very good for your feet, right? Because what they do is they don't allow you to actually walk. I mean, most ordinary shoes will help you to walk because they'll put your foot in a particular position.
Yes.
But if you're wearing flip-flops, actually, I mean, I can't wear flip-flops. I hate having anything in between my toes.
Well, I totally agree.
So I've never owned a pair of flip-flops.
And then you have to use the muscles in your big toe and your toe next to it in a very odd way, like a claw, like a claw to work around the bit of rubber that holds your feet in. I hate the damn things. If I ever go to the beach and something like that, rather than flip-flops, I just wear a, what do you call it, like a shoe-on type thing, you know what I mean?
A shoe-on?
Well, it's got like a rubber thing at the front, but it goes over your whole foot.
Oh, yeah.
Not just one little bit of rubber.
Somebody's actually sent a pair of those in with Velcro. They can attach with Velcro. They said you quite like those because you like Velcro shoes.
I haven't got any Velcro shoes.
You have? I've seen them.
I haven't.
Peter says this, Washington State is named after our first president, Porky. His image is even right smack in the middle of the state flag.
Who's that? George Washington?
Yes.
Well,
that's where Washington State's named after.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That is right.
No, you said it wasn't before.
No, what I said was it wasn't directly named after George Washington for his victory in the... Oh, God. You've seen this? Look at that pair of feet there.
Yeah.
My God! Just to explain to our millions of listeners,
that does that not mean something if your second toe is that much longer than the rest of your feet?
It's horrendous. You've got a big toe here with half a nail, and the rest of it is covered in skin that's grown over it. Then you've got from the left, you've got a little toe, and then a fourth toe and a third toe, but the big, the one next to the big toe is an inch longer than all the rest.
Yes.
And I mean, this
does that not signify something? It's a bit like having, when they
Devil's Child, I think.
Well, I know it's Devil's Child. I don't want to go a bit far, but when you hold your fingers up, and if your middle finger is longer than the ring finger, then it signifies something. I can't remember what it was.
I don't know. But anyway, it's revolting.
Everybody's now doing that as we speak. My middle finger's longer than my ring finger. You see that? Like that. So is yours, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, so is yours.
Yes, it is. Yeah, just a bit. Yeah.
Well, it's not that puzzling. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah. So anyway, look, that sort of thing really should be banned. So I'm glad we started this debate because my only purpose in life really is to try and make people aware of these things. And often people don't approach these sort of socially delicate situations, right?
Yeah.
Because they feel they're. They feel that they will be deride it.
Yes.
Well, it's no.
You
good
don't mind that, do you?
Well, I don't get derided when I speak up. People normally say that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, here's another one that somebody's having a go at you over. Lucy says this: most students are deadbeat bums.
Yeah. Well, that was a bit of a
no, we
throwaway.
are not. So Lucy obviously is a student. Explain your sweeping statement, please, Porky.
Well, okay. Listen, I'm sorry, Lucy. That was a bit of a broad sweeping statement. What I meant is that having been students ourselves, young Mr. Graham here and myself, we do know that the amount of time that students spend actually applying themselves to studentship in a week is not great.
Well, you could say that, but I guess there are. I mean, when you were a student,
Yes.
if you ever came across somebody who spent their entire time in the library,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to hang around with them.
No, you wouldn't know.
And in fact, you wouldn't hang around with them. You'd never see them because you would never go in the library.
I remember in one year's examinations, we met this guy after some examination. He said, "Oh God," he said, that was so tough, that examination. He said, I had 6 pints after that examination. And I informed him that I'd had 6 pints before the examination because that made me feel better.
Yes. But, I mean, you spent most of your student life trying to gain an edge, didn't you? Trying to get some sort of unfair advantage.
What do you mean?
So that you would either copy somebody else's work or you would make sure that somebody had done the work for you.
No, I found it quite easy, and that's one of the reasons why I gave up being a student. It wasn't a challenge to me. And anyway, you don't go anywhere in life for the 3 years you've been a student. You're racking up a debt, aren't you? And I don't know why a lot of students do it.
Really?
And the worst thing, by the way, and this is another bugbear of mine, and it's going to start happening right now, and I advise every parent listening to this show to, rail against it, is now they've got their A-levels and, everything's looking hunky-dory, 2 A's and a B or 3 A's, something like that. Go to their parents and say, look, can I go off on a gap year, please, to Australia? Yeah. No. When you come back, the world's moved on a year. The world's moved on a year.
But your experience in the world has moved on as well, because you've seen places that you hadn't previously seen.
This is all rubbish. All this idea about, you go to an employer and the employer says, and so I see you're applying for your first job, and what were you doing last year? I travelled here and there. So students try and tell you, an employer then looks at you with admiring glances and say, well done. You took the initiative to go to Australia, and you've been to New Zealand, you've been to the South America, seen a bit of the world. Yeah. No. Most employers will say, what were you doing, wasting your time for 12 years?
But you might not be
flying
doing
around the world with a rucksack on your back.
Hang on, you might not be doing it for the benefit of the future employer. You might be doing it for your own benefit. You might wish to broaden your horizons. You might wish to travel and see places like Vietnam. You might want to go to Australia, as you say. You might want to go to Peru, Bolivia.
Well, hang on.
Check out Buenos Aires.
Hang on.
Why not? How can that be a bad thing?
Hang on. You and I have been around the world collectively about 3 times. Okay?
Well, yeah, but that's because we were fortunate enough to have somebody else pay for us to do that.
No, that's because we started working at a very early age. We copped out of university, got into journalism, and then got right to the top. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. And as a result
but not everybody wants to do that.
Well, people should want to do that. People who don't want to do that, I'm afraid, fail. And they can't go around moaning that, I failed and nobody gave me a chance and all that. While you're busy lounging on Bondi Beach, right, somebody else is taking that opportunity in life that you've decided to put aside. Right. That is the truth of the matter.
What about the idea that you might want to travel abroad to see whether you actually like it so much there that you want to stay there and get a job there? Because don't forget, if you're a student now in this country, you may be about to go and do a degree, embark on a degree course, which you're telling people they shouldn't do because there aren't enough jobs for them. Yeah. They then get themselves into a whole load of debt. Yes. They come out and they get a job for $12,000 a year. Well, maybe they're better off lying around on Bondi Beach.
Don't do it. No. And how long do you lie around on Bondi Beach until you become
too old to
lie around on Bondi Beach? No, it's nothing. I remember I worked with a guy once, and do you remember there was a song out many years ago, in fact in my youth, and it was a holiday job I had, and it was at a supermarket, believe it or not. And he was about
supermarket?
I used to hump boxes of Omo around, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. I don't think they make that anymore, do they?
No, Daz and Omo, remember them?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And this guy's about 2 years on me. Funny enough, I told you this story before. He was the first person ever to introduce me to drink. Yeah. We went to the pub at lunchtime.
He's got a lot to answer for, this guy.
Yeah, but there was this... we were in this pub and the jukebox came on. This record came on, it was Be Young, be foolish, but be happy. Now, that was some rap singer, wasn't it?
Rap singer?
Didn't have rap singers in those days.
I don't think it was a rap
soul
singer.
So, don't you remember the song?
No.
be young, be foolish, but be happy.
I don't remember that.
And he said...
Sounds like one of those awful kind of 60s
No,
pop,
it was be young. No, it was a very popular... I mean, years later, when I was, the king of the discos, I used to play it all the time because, ladies used to rush on the dance floor and start dancing to it.
Really?
Be young,
wasn't Live
be
Free,
foolish.
that one?
No, but be happy.
Young Hearts.
No,
Live
Young
Free,
Hearts Run Free. It wasn't that one, no. It was be young, be foolish, be happy. Look, in the break, next break will come up, I'm going to ask our tech guys to find it, and we'll play it out at the start of the next hour, because be young, be foolish, be happy. But anyway, the point... I remember this guy's name. His name is Peter Kennedy, right? Yeah, funny enough.
Doesn't sound like a rap star to me.
No.
Peter Kennedy.
No, the guy who I was working with at the supermarket. His name was Peter Kennedy.
Okay.
And I remember we were in there, we were having a pint of lager and lime. I was on my...
As you do.
Yeah, I was on my second, and I was, like 4 sheets to the wind, so to speak, you know what I mean?
You're not supposed to be at work?
Well, it was in the lunch hour.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of pints at lunch hour, And he said to me, this is my philosophy in life. I said, what's that? He said, young, foolish, but happy. Yeah. And I said, because I went to the King's School, Chester. I'd grown up with a different philosophy. Right. And I said, well, we've got to look to the future, though, haven't you? The future, who knows what the future holds? Be young, be foolish, be happy. Right. I wonder whatever became of him.
Yeah, well, he'd be old now, wouldn't he?
He'd be old.
So one of them's already gone.
Still foolish. I bet he's very unhappy.
Still foolish and unhappy.
I should imagine he's very unhappy.
It hasn't worked out terribly well for him.
I should imagine the sort of guy now who's going around, bumming drinks off his mates in pubs all over Ellesmere Port, where I think he came from.
Do you think he's still lugging the Omo around as well?
Yeah, probably still lugging the Omo around. That's
very
right.
Possibly so. Now, we haven't got a lot more time here because we've got to get some news organised very, very shortly.
Yeah.
Coming up very soon. And in the next hour, we're going to be talking about Mark Chapman. We're going to do Ask Porky. Loads more coming up.
You're listening to the Two Mics on TalkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged.
Enjoy.
He's found it.
Yeah, exactly. So we found it when you were here.
Ed the Genius.
Yeah.
I don't recognise it at all, though.
Do you know who the group is?
Who?
The Tams.
The Tams? Okay.
Yeah, isn't that good?
Yeah, no, it's awful, actually. A bit more of it.
And it was all about, sort of...
Well, let's hear it then.
Okay.
Have your fun, live every day in the bright sunshine. The bright sunshine. It's the same old story all over the world.
I could just see you and your old hapless colleague there filling shelves with Omo boxes.
That's right, yeah.
To that.
Yeah,
that's awful.
Exactly.
That is awful.
Yeah, but years later, when I was, as I say, king of the King's Disco, actually, in Chester, I used to spring onto the dance floor when this happened.
Really?
Because, the young ladies used to love it,
Yeah. Well, again,
every disco I ever went to in that era, they just used to put all these soul records on all the time because the whole idea was to...
That's not a soul record.
Well, it is, kind of.
No, it's not.
Well, it's a disco record,
and it's
then.
nothing like anything I've ever heard that would be described as soul.
All the young ladies would rush onto the dance floor, and then the guys would sort of rush into the disco to buy all the young ladies a lot of drinks and all that kind of stuff. That was the
mind boggles.
The modus operandi. Yeah.
Anyway, we are the Two Mics, as you probably guessed.
Are.
We are here all week between 7 and 10 in the evening. Yeah. We've got Porky quiz coming up at the end of the week. We've got listography to do. We'll have Porky Vision. We will, of course, also today have Ask Porky.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is very well underway. We've got loads and loads of good questions.
Yes.
Hashtag it, Ask Porky. Send it at the Two Mics or look for us on Facebook. You're listening to Two Mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. Now, Bob, who I think is trying to be a bit clever here, says UK students may also want to visit Africa south of the Sahara and north of the Limpopo to expand their horizons. So what do you think of that?
Is that something about, like, the Earth, the
maybe
horizon?
Something to do with the horizons and the equators and all that sort of thing?
And all that kind of stuff. Yeah, thanks very much. Who's that from?
That's from Bob.
Okay, Bob, thanks for that. Like a bit of clever chat on this show.
And Scott says, I'm surprised Mike Parry doesn't wear pyjamas. I've only been in first class once and got a set. He would show his sets off. Have you ever been in first class and got a set of pyjamas?
Yeah, okay, all the time.
What do you mean all the time?
I've got a few sets of those, yeah. I've got one going to Singapore once.
What, airline pyjamas?
Airline pyjamas,
what do they say, Singapore Airlines on them?
Yes. Right. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But
and are they silk?
No.
They're made of paper?
No, not made of paper.
You know those slippers they give you on a plane?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not particularly long-lasting, are they? So presumably the pyjamas aren't either.
I've got loads of, like, fluffy slippers from good hotels I've stayed in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You always sort of bring them
I
back.
always bring those
back. Exactly, yeah. Now, listen, talking about music and all that, right? 2 observations here. Firstly, did you know that after the reintroduction of vinyl records...
Yes.
And then people
you mean most recently?
Most recently.
Yes.
And then bring back cassettes, okay? There's a call for that. People want to
There is, but I haven't really seen that sort of picking up quite as much.
I've got hundreds of cassettes, by the way. Hundreds. I used to use in my car, you know. But the latest
I got rid of all mine.
The latest thing, believe it or not, is that there's a demand now to bring back mono records.
Mono?
Yeah.
Why?
I've no idea, but I mean, let's explain to our younger listeners what mono is.
Yeah.
You know, in the days when records were first produced on 16-track machines, not getting technical here.
Well, 8-track, I think it was.
8-track, I think it probably was. When you put a record on and you got the arm over and the needle went down on the record, it came out of one speaker.
Yeah.
That was basically it, because it was called a radiogram.
That's right.
Now, then in sort of the 60s, late 60s, somebody developed something called stereo.
Yes.
And that's when your music came out of two speakers. And if you were clever enough to walk between one and the other, you'd hear like the bass coming out of one and something else coming out the other.
But that was very rudimentary stereo,
it was
wasn't it?
very rudimentary.
Because later, I mean, for example, the Beatles were very much part of this movement where if for some reason one of your speakers didn't work, you couldn't hear half the song.
You couldn't hear half the song.
Because half the song came out of one speaker
That's
and
right.
the other half came out of the other.
One was called a woofer, wasn't it? A woofer.
Well, there's a tweeter and a woofer.
A tweeter
inside,
and a woofer, that's right.
Well, that's inside most speakers now.
Is that right? Okay, yeah.
Your lack of knowledge about this is shocking.
Well,
considering you're in the broadcasting business.
Anyway, apparently people say no. The true pure sound of the great records, and they highlight a Rolling Stones LP called "Let It Bleed." Remember that one?
I do.
Yeah, I do.
That was one with a cake on the front, wasn't it?
Yeah, cake on the front. In fact, I've got a picture of it here. Look, cake and on top of a radiogram, so to speak, spinning round on top of the record.
Yeah,
okay?
turntable.
Yeah, turntable, that's right, yeah. So anyway, it says, vinyl is so passé that if you want to improve your esoteric audiophile credentials... Esoteric, yeah. The important thing is to roll back technology even further and insist on listening to your favourite bands in mono.
But see, now this is getting stupid.
Of course it is.
It's all very well listening to records because you prefer the richness of the sound of the vinyl, which a lot of people say they do.
Yes.
And I must admit, I'm very much enjoying playing all my old records because I got a new record player.
However,
I would not want to go back to the sound that they used to make, when they were terrible. Why would you?
Amazingly, the claim here, and this is a scientific survey apparently, the claim here is that in the 1960s, stereo was a new development and bands were suspicious. The entire 60s back catalogue of the Rolling Stones is to be released in mono. This comes after the re-release of the Beatles' albums in mono. In both cases, devotees of those groups claim that the experience of listening to those records is closer to that intended by the people who wrote and recorded the records. So they're saying Mick Jagger and Paul McCartney actually preferred those records to what we've got today.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even then, in the studio when they were recording them, when they heard what was being played back in the studio, it sounded an awful lot better than it did for most people who played it on their little radiogram.
Amazing thing. So here are George Harrison, obviously the late great lead guitarist for the Beatles.
Yeah.
He says, when they invented stereo, I remember thinking, why have they done that?
Yeah.
Why do you need two speakers? Can you imagine George Harrison saying this?
Right.
Why do you need two speakers? Because it ruined the sound from our point of view. We had everything coming out of one speaker, which was absolutely perfect for us.
Right.
Now it came out of two speakers, and to me it sounded pretty naked.
Yeah, but actually I think you may have a point, because while I was like what I was saying to you at that time, they split the sound.
That's right.
It wasn't the same stuff coming out of two speakers, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if it was, as it is now, two things, you don't get two different things coming out of speakers now unless they're doing some kind of special effect.
Exactly.
Like on one of the Pink Floyd albums when they move the sound from one speaker to another.
Yes.
And that's quite cool.
So you don't get that these days, then?
No.
Don't you?
Well, not at all. Well, I mean, if you listen to the stereo that you've got at home, I presume it's got two speakers.
Well, listen to the one in my car. It's got six speakers, okay?
Right, it's got six, but there's nothing different. There's not one speaker doing one.
I'm sure
thing.
if I move my head sometimes, I can hear, you might get a tinkling of a piano in the background, which you've never heard before, or something like that. I often hear that sort of thing.
Really?
I think, yeah.
I think that's just something in your head.
But, I think so. Anyway, it says here, Mick Jagger too would approve of a reversion to mono. He once described a mix for a new stereo developed record as lousy. On a mono recording, this explains it scientifically. On a mono recording, one signal is sent to a speaker or speakers, right? So you can have two speakers, but you get the same sound coming out. Yeah. While stereo sends two signals, each a slightly different version of the recording. Yeah. The extent to which each version emphasised different tracks, as we've said in like 16 track, 64 track or whatever, depends on the sound mixer. In general, the singer will be placed in the centre, meaning the track is played with equal weight from each speaker, with other instruments biased towards either side to place the listener in a virtual concert.
Yeah, right. But
you still get a guitar coming out of that speaker and the drums coming out the other.
I don't think it does that much anymore. I mean, certainly what used to happen was that with Beatles songs, if you had the balance and you went from left to right, which is the sort of thing you do when you were just discovering it,
that's right.
You wouldn't hear the vocal.
You wouldn't hear the vocal.
If you went, if you went all the way to one side, you wouldn't hear the vocal, which is mad.
Right. Well,
you don't get that now.
You don't get it now, okay. So this is done at a study at the University of York, and Jez Wells, a lecturer in music, that's a good name, isn't it, for a professor of music, Jez Wells.
Jez Wells.
Yeah. At the University of York, said it was extremely unlikely that stereo was on the way out, with the format offering clear advantages, but that didn't mean that everyone buying mono was simply being pretentious. He says, I think there are some legitimate reasons why people want to listen in mono, but I suspect some of it is about people being seduced by the romance of the older format. So basically, he's saying that these are just like old people who want to revert to their youth and say, oh, that sounded just like it did in the 60s with the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Pathetic, honestly. Get with it. Mono was mono and stereo. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think so. Did you ever have one of those surround sound? Do you remember when they sold those TVs with surround sound?
Yes.
And you'd buy all these little speakers.
All the boxes all over the place.
Did you ever have one of those?
Well, my brother-in-law got one once, and he put the boxes up all around the room, and it was ridiculous. It was like living on a street. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You never knew where the next noise was coming from. Right. You couldn't tell what it was. It was so warped and bent, and they only lasted a couple of years, didn't they? And then people threw them away.
Because it was ridiculous, the whole idea.
Absolutely.
When I was at school, I used to go to various kind of very expensive, like Bang & Olufsen and Bose and places like that, because they'd have these the shops that you could go and look at, because I was always quite interested in buying little bits of stereos. I'd buy an amplifier from over here. I'd buy a turntable from there.
Yeah, sure,
I'd buy all these magazines to see which was the best one. I don't know where I got the money from, to be honest. It was quite expensive. But I used to go and sit in these kind of demonstration rooms.
That's right.
And I was only like 13 or 14 or something. Yeah. And they used to let me do it.
Yeah.
And I'd be wearing a school uniform.
Yeah.
And they'd play this music to me. And then come in with very sort of oily hands and go, well, of course, depending on the layout of your room, which was just a basic kid's bedroom.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
You would go, we recommend that you get this bag. And it was about £1,000 or something in the 70s.
Yeah.
I don't know why they let me do it.
Well,
and I don't actually to this day know why I did it. Well, it was great fun.
You're a bit of a con man, really. You can convince
people.
I
wasn't trying to con anyone. I just quite liked listening to the different sounds that were being made.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. More basic than that.
Yeah.
We used to have a record shop near the bus stop where we got the bus down to the King's School Chester, and we used to go in there. And because I think we had like King's School plays on, something like that, they thought we were honest and all that kind of stuff. And
that was the first mistake.
Yeah. And I remember one kid, because I'd never heard of this guy. He said, I want to listen to the new Richie Havens LP, please. Ever heard of Richie Havens?
I interviewed Richie Havens.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. He was at Woodstock. Well, he played at Woodstock.
He played at Woodstock, did he? Okay.
So we did a whole retrospective thing on Woodstock, basically, when I lived in New York.
Right.
But he was a great guy. Fantastic. Yeah. Really nice.
Anyway, so I said, I'll listen to the latest Richie Havens stuff, Okay.
I'm very impressed that you know who he is, actually.
Well, I do now, because this mate of mine at school seemed to like him. And he went in, all you did is you just went into, like, what basically could have been a phone booth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right,
with just a cover over it. And you just went in there and you just listened to it until the bus came, and then you just walked out.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous, It's like having your own personal disco.
It was brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Now, we've got loads of other things to talk about. We've got the Red Baron to talk about as well. We've got pubs closing to talk about, which is a big worry.
What about Mel Seats sticking to the music?
What, you mean talk more about the Spice Girls?
Well, I'm not sure. Later on in the show, maybe.
Later.
But she says, I'm never going to rejoin the Spices.
I think a lot of people will be very relieved to hear that.
Yeah.
I think they really will. More horrendous pictures of people's toes coming in. One from Dave.
Yeah.
No. However, Pete says hotel slippers are fine, but flip-flops are the worst thing ever.
I totally
Double
agree.
Standards, Porky.
Yep.
Double standards.
No, they're not double standards. I totally agree. I've always taken home the hotel slippers, but I wouldn't wear a pair of flip-flops. No, thank you.
Also, you wouldn't wear the hotel slippers out on the street, would you?
Of course you wouldn't. You take them home because I tell you what, they are perfect for when somebody visits your house and you ask them to take their shoes off. You give them a pair of hotel slippers, which are already still wrapped up in a cellophane packet. Yeah, that's what I do.
Well, nobody ever visits you.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Well, if you gave those to me, I'd chuck them straight out the window.
But you said you take yours home as well.
Well, I do,
So what do you do with them?
Well, I don't give them to people.
Well, what do you do with
them?
them?
I wear them.
You wear them?
I wear them
You
coming
got your own
out. If
slippers?
I'm coming out of the shower, wear them for about 2 weeks and then chuck them away.
You see, that's what a waste.
You're listening to the Two Mics on TalkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. we are the Two Mics. Ask Porky coming up in the next hour, of course. We've got lots more coming up in this hour, though, because we're going to be talking to Tom Stainer, who's at CAMRA, the campaign for Real Ale, because there's rather a disturbing story about pubs which keep shutting down.
Yeah.
I should update you on the flip-flop...
yes, please.
The flip-flop
poll.
Vote, poll, whatever it is. What do you think is the question? Mike Parry wants to ban flip-flops when worn in non-flip-flop conditions.
Yes.
It's gone back in favour of you. Banned a lot of them, 54%.
Lovely.
Leave my flip-flops alone, 46%.
Yeah, well, more and more pictures are coming in of revolting pairs of feet.
Have you seen Steven Tyler's?
Hideous, eh?
You know who Steven Tyler is, right?
Who's Steve?
He's the lead singer of Aerosmith.
Oh,
he looks
okay.
a bit, the guy looks a bit like Mick Jagger.
Okay, yeah.
You might say.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss a thing. Remember that song?
Don't want to miss a thing.
Do you remember that?
No.
You don't want to miss.
But I mean, I'm sure it's a good one.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Well, his feet are absolutely hideous, and many people are saying that basically, if you want to know why you shouldn't wear flip flops, have a look at Steven Tyler's feet.
And what's wrong with them?
Well, they're all misshapen and kind of toes overrunning one another.
Okay.
It's not very nice. Really.
No, it's not very nice indeed.
Quite a few people are also complaining they're trying to eat their dinner while having this horrible discussion about feet.
Well, I'm awfully sorry, but I mean, it's not my fault that revolting people go around wearing flip-flops, and I think it's my responsibility as a adjudicator of social graces to point them out.
Yes, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk to Tom Stainer, who's been waiting very patiently.
Indeed.
Because, of course, you were saying earlier to me that there's quite a few pubs at the moment having problems with keeping themselves open, not because of the smoking ban, not because of the fact that the licences are getting more and more expensive, but for lots of other reasons.
That's right.
Tom, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. How you doing?
Yeah,
very well indeed. Thank you.
Very well indeed. Now, the story seems to be that a lot of pubs are basically, effectively, losing their lease. They're not being able to renew the lease because the price for where the spaces they're occupying has gone so much through the roof that they just have to give up.
No, that's right, and this is something that CAMRA's been campaigning for almost 10 years now, that there needs to be a much fairer balance between the people who own these properties and the guys who are trying to make a successful business out of them. And I think far too often the myth that only bad pubs close is being exploded, where you get very, very good pubs being run, doing a great service, and just because a property owner decides that they want to make more profit out of it, they're paying these huge, unrealistic rents, which no business could afford to pay.
And I mean, is that basically going on in every part of the country, or is it more prevalent in London just because of the high price of property in London?
I think London, as with many things, is a particular extreme where you can make so much money out of luxury flats and properties in fashionable areas, but we are sadly seeing this repeated across the country in any city centre and quite a lot of urban areas where you can make a very, very quick buck just by converting something to property. But it's sort of short-termism on the part of these owners in that they just want to make a profit quickly and be out of there. And they're depriving communities of these great assets, and they're taking away the employment opportunities. They're taking away the money that pubs generate for the local area. And the profit they're making on these pubs being turned into flats is being taken out of those areas and never comes back.
Tom, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm looking at one particular pub here, right? I saw a report on it. It's called the Truscott Arms, busy gastro pub in a very fashionable part of London.
Maida Vale, right?
Maida Vale, that's absolutely right. And it's a popular, well-run and profitable pub. But the thing is, the chap who owns it, right, he was asked to pay on an agreement he already had, an increase of from $85,000 to $170,000 a year on the lease, okay? And they knew, the people who asked him to do that, the freeholders of the land, he wouldn't be able to do that and make the business work, so he had to close it down. And now it is going to be sold to property developers. Now, you've explained to me that this is a growing trend, but how on earth can this be stopped? Because it's going to end up with no pubs in the better areas of London. We're not going to have any pubs in Kensington or Mayfair or Maida Vale if this is allowed to keep going on.
I think you're absolutely right. And again, it goes back to short-sightedness of some of these property developers. Who wants to live in an area that's just flats as far as the eye can see? Right. You want an area that has a beating heart. You want an area that has these community services, whether they're schools or shops or pubs. And I think realistically, you look at the rents people are charging in these areas, and none of those vital community services could survive paying those rents. They couldn't be viable. So there has to be some understanding that if you want somewhere that people live in, they also want to have those services around them, which makes somewhere feel like a community. And pubs are actually vital to do that. And just hiking these rents up, as you say, maybe in some cases, so you can then claim that this business is no longer viable, therefore the pub can close, therefore we can turn it into flats for a huge profit, is actually being very short-sighted. It's not viewing what the community needs and actually what an area needs.
No, I totally agree, because, I mean, we all said, didn't we, when places like Canary Wharf grew up in London, and there's other areas in other cities which have been redeveloped, we call them soulless. And we call them soulless because basically people are putting up, blocks of flats, but they haven't grown up in a community where there are pubs and shops and all that kind of thing. So instead
of... Yeah, but funnily enough, they used to say that about Canary Wharf years and years ago, but now, because there's more people there and it's a bigger place and it's been around longer, actually, I don't think it is soulless anymore.
I don't think it is, but what I'm saying is we complained of it being soulless when it started. Yeah. What we're doing is we're turning other areas of London, which have a community, into these soulless quarters. And eventually people will get the idea, won't they, that there's not much there apart from the flat they live in.
No, that's right. And you asked what people can do. The Truscott Arms had an asset of community value listing, and interestingly, it looks like the developers did challenge that. So it shows how developers do fear these ACV listings, because it gives the community a chance to have a say before a pub is sold or changed into use that's not a pub.
Yeah.
But I think what this particular case also shows is that ACVs are not strong enough on their own, and Wandsworth Council are really, leading the way at the moment in that they're giving added protection to pubs. And I think all councils should look at what Wandsworth are doing and say, ACVs are not enough. They're a good start. They allow communities to protect pubs to a certain extent, but councils need to step forward and say, no, we value these local services and community assets. We're going to do something to make sure they're not the soft targets for developers that they currently are. Because at the moment, it's far too easy for pubs to be changed into something else without going through the planning process.
Yeah.
As we've been in London over the last year or so, pubs have been knocked down without reference to local planners. They're too easy a target, and there's too much very quick profit to be made on them. And if we think they're important as communities, we need to do more to protect them, and councillors need to do more to protect them.
I totally agree. Now, just to broaden this a bit outside of London, because, of course, there's a bubble in London where, lots of people live, but lots of people don't. I live down on the coast in a place called Gosport, and because of the withdrawal of funds to the military over the last 10 or 15 years, I can count in the street I live in alone, 9 pubs have closed. That street being from the motorway down to the water. But at the same time, a couple have opened. So is it still the case that good pubs can still survive in the modern climate, and poor pubs, because a lot of them were really pretty run down, they're pubs for sailors for decades and decades, but good pubs can still survive and will still open?
No, I think you're right. In some cases, it's clear that pubs are not going to survive because they haven't changed their business enough to attract in customers. And like any business, you need to compete. You need to give a compelling offering. You need to give value to money. You need to give people a reason to leave their big TVs, to leave their cheap supermarket alcohol, and walk down the road and visit you.
Yeah.
But I think,
and they have to have decent food as well, don't they?
Yeah, well, sometimes it can be food. There's some very successful pubs that don't go big on food. They just offer this great environment to you to meet and socialise and get all those benefits of well-being that you get from going down the pub. But I think, the Truscott is a good example of the proof. Even a really good, popular pub, I know they're doing 500 covers or something, they're not struggling as a business. But if someone comes along and whacks on this huge rent, even the best businessman in the world is not going to survive.
No.
And, pubs need to be used. They need to be supported, but the government, the local councils need to protect them. They need to help them in terms of the tax that's charged on beer. They need to do more to bring that gulf between what you pay for alcohol in supermarkets to pubs, close together. It's really important. If we think pubs are important, and I certainly do,
I do.
Hopefully other people do.
Well, it's the whole situation, isn't it? I mean, I know you're not responsible or perhaps as interested in just ordinary restaurants, but it must be hitting restaurants as well.
Well, it must,
who are quite successful in the middle of a city, and suddenly their rent more than doubles, and they can't stay.
Yeah, and all these sort of businesses that are, they're leasing the premises off these property-only companies. In many cases, have no interest in the business that's being run from them. They're just interested in the pounds and pence. Can be driven out of business because a property developer decides actually that site is going to make me much more money from 6, 7, 8 flats sold at however much. And again, these are businesses that are vital to the local economies, they're vital to local communities, they employ people, they bring money in a way that property developers are not. They're not employing people, and the money gets sucked out and taken somewhere else.
Indeed it does. I don't know how we're going to solve that problem. Perhaps we're going to have to subsidise pubs with government money, Tom, because we subsidise theatres all over the country. Yeah. So, and they're a vital community need, according to some. I think pubs are a more vital community need.
I think about it. I don't think necessarily pubs need to be subsidised. They can hold their own as businesses. It just needs to be a level playing field. Let them start in the same place as everyone else. Support them, protect them. Don't make them a soft target. And good pubs will survive. But unfortunately, in some cases, the Truscott Arms shows very good pub run by very good licensee is not surviving because it shows the pressure that people are under.
Yeah, indeed.
Indeed, it does.
Tom, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm just looking at the Twitter account for the Truscott Arms. It looks fabulous. It looks like it's got brilliant. It says best roast dinner in Great Britain, top 10 British restaurants in the Evening Standard, top 5 by top table.
Absolutely.
So extraordinary that
except it's not open anymore.
Well, I presume it's going to be closing very, very soon. But I mean, the trouble is with the company that they keep in terms of the chief medical officer. No government is going to subsidise drinking, are they? They're never going to do it because they're going to always be telling you, well, make sure you don't drink too much.
I totally agree, but I do think sometimes that the Arts Council in this country has a very disproportionate influence on the amount of money it gets from public funds because the Arts Council is basically supported by, the top 0.5% of society in this country.
The people who like opera.
Yeah, well, people like opera, there's nothing wrong with that. The Royal Ballet and all that kind of stuff, fantastic, and brings great artistic merit to the country. But at the same time, very, very few people, percentage-wise, in any community go to the opera or go to the Royal Ballet or even go to the theatre in many cases.
No, exactly right.
They can, of course,
come and see the two mics who are not subsidised at all.
Not subsidised at all. And in fact, funny enough,
our next show's in Whitley Bay, isn't it?
Our next show's in Whitley Bay, and it's on September the 24th, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday, September the 24th. Then the one after that is in Liverpool on November the 4th.
That's right.
It's a Friday. Right? Yes. And then Glasgow, we can announce.
December the 17th.
December the 17th, Saturday before Christmas. Wow, is Glasgow going to be rocking on that weekend?
Certainly will be. Absolutely. Now, we've got lots more coming up, of course, including Ask Porky. We're going to have a look at what's in the papers tomorrow with Metro as well. This is TalkSport.
You're listening to the Two Mics on TalkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged.
Enjoy.
We are the Two Mics. Got a picture here from Taxi Man who says the upstairs neighbour's favourite shoes, and he's done what can only be described as a pair of bricks made into flip-flops. But I presume that's the sort of trouble that
neighbour's favourite.
Yeah, that's if you live somewhere where the person upstairs clunks around in shoes.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
it sometimes sounds like that. People get very worked up about that.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, you've lived in flats, an awful lot.
I have.
I mean, you're always claiming that you're in a penthouse. I suppose you'll say there's nobody above you.
No, there isn't actually. But
do you never get any complaints from people below you saying, "Do you mind not walking around on wooden floors making lots and lots of noise"?
No. In fact, funny enough, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, we were doing a show, and for some unknown reason, we got on to how hot some houses can be these days, because of the amount of insulation. Well, I can tell you for sure, because I was going to add to that conversation. If I go to my place on the coast in December, right? I know we don't have bitterly cold winters here, but I mean, you can.
Well, you do in some parts of the country.
All right, well, I'm talking about on the coast.
I mean, up in Edinburgh where we've just been.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets very cold.
Yeah, well, it gets very cold on the coast. If there's a wind blowing in, across the Solent or something like that, it can get very cold. But when I go in to the place, if I haven't been there for a few days, right, I have to open the sliding window sort of patio doors because it's too hot.
Yeah.
And the reason is that you can say, well, is that a good thing? The reason is that over the last 10 or 12 years, because of the fear of, wasting like heating
valuable
and
resources.
fuel and resources and all that.
The world's energies.
Yeah. The amount of regulations now for insulation in apartments, in flats, is so rigorous that, frankly, nothing escapes. And it's so warm, even in midwinter, I have to have the windows open.
The problem with that is nothing escapes, nothing comes in either.
Well,
so you're actually living in a sort of air-conditioned bubble.
Yeah, sort of.
But the air never gets refreshed.
You never have to switch the heaters on. I mean, there's no gas in the property. It's all electric run, including the heaters. But I don't even know how to use them, to be honest. Because
you've never had to switch it on ever?
Well, yes, I have had to switch them on occasionally for an hour. But what I'm saying is I don't use a timer to switch them on and off during the winter when I'm not there because it's completely unnecessary. Right. So I don't know how the timer works.
But if you live in an old house, right, which is quite big,
absolutely,
and you walk into it and you haven't maybe been away on holiday, or you haven't been there for like a few days, it is very cold.
Oh, I totally agree.
It doesn't have like central heating.
Well, I mean, most people do have central heating, but even if you have central heating, you'll see in some properties older than the ones I live in.
Yeah.
there's gaps between the window frame and the wall and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's been going on for years. It gets worse as the
First
age
house
of
I
the
bought
goes.
in Wiltshire had an anthracite fired boiler.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
do you know that? You know that
Yeah,
anthracite
anthracite's
stuff?
like coke.
It is. It's
Yeah.
like sort of little pebbles of
Little
coal.
cubes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But it was a terribly hard thing to light, and you couldn't leave it on when you weren't there.
No.
So basically, when you came home from being away,
Yeah.
or being off for a few days, you'd
Yeah.
have to try and light it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it was a terrible,
you know,
terrible thing.
You know the famous song that we'll soon be hearing, Going Home for Christmas, Chris
What?
Rea.
We're going to be playing it soon.
Well, Christmas is
You
coming.
keep saying soon. It's still August.
I'm telling you, man,
It's not even September yet.
in the last 4 pubs I've been in this part of the world,
Right.
I've seen the Christmas mural in the corner. Book
What?
your Christmas lunch here. Book your Christmas party here.
Yeah, well,
it's all over
that
the
doesn't mean
place now.
Christmas is coming, though.
Listen, do you know what happens these days? You gauge your calendar like this now. As soon as the football season starts,
Yeah.
1 week later, Christmas
Well,
preparations
we're going to get
follow.
October half term out of the way first.
Well, you've got
I
to
mean,
get.
the summer school holidays are still on. My kids don't go back to school
I'm
till
telling
next week.
I'm telling you, the gearing up for Christmas is already coming. I mean, for instance, you normally gauge it that football season starts, then you get the first England international, right? Then you get, like you quite rightly say, half term. Then you get even fireworks night, okay?
Yeah.
That's not even come and gone
November
yet.
the 5th.
Oh no, sorry. First of all, it's Halloween, isn't
Halloween,
it?
yeah.
Halloween. And
End
then
of
fireworks
October.
night.
Yeah.
And then what happened to the end of November? Something else, you know what I
Well,
mean?
Thanksgiving in America.
Thanksgiving in America last Thursday in November, quite right. And then you sort of hurtle down the hill to Christmas. It's already started. Anyway.
Well, talk about wishing your life away. You've quite depressed me now.
Why?
I thought there was quite a lot of time to go between now and then.
No time at all.
I've got another week's holiday to squeeze in.
Indeed. Now, what I was going to say to you is that the Chris Rea song, Going Home for Christmas.
Yeah, driving home for Christmas.
Yeah. Oh, here
Oh,
it is.
no.
That's it. Here we go.
I really don't want to hear
Driving
it now.
Home for Christmas. Yeah. Well, yeah, just listen
This
to
is
that.
actually one of the ones
Yeah.
I like, funnily enough.
Yeah, that's right.
I do apologise to anyone listening
Yeah.
thinking they've woken up out
Yeah.
of a sort of very long sleep.
Okay, right, cut that. Thank you. It's depressing old MG. But anyway, that's the very song. When I saw him interviewed last year, talking about this, he said the reason I wrote it was this. He said I was broke. I mean, absolutely stony broke. And then he wrote Road to Hell, right? Which is written about the M25.
Yeah.
He said, and when they got home, he was so broke they hadn't been able to afford the heating in the house because he comes from Middlesbrough, I think, and he'd been working in London, you know, in recording studios and all that. And
What did he spend all his money on?
well, he didn't have any money until he wrote "This Is the Road
He
to
must
Hell."
make some fortune out of this one, though.
Well,
Driving home for
he
Christmas.
does, but you see, this is the point of the story.
Right.
So he'd made this record, and he'd finally got a breakthrough, but he still hadn't been home for 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. And he said he got home, and he opened the door to his house in Middlesbrough, and as they walked in, it was colder in the house than it was outside. Because there was ice on the inside of the windows. It was like an icebox and all that.
Yeah.
But he picked up the mail from the doormat, and in it was his first royalty check for The Road to Hell of about like 25 grand or something.
Brilliant.
You see what I mean?
Right.
And so out of that, he said, I wrote this song because it was such a joyous...
Because I presume he thought he was going home with no presents,
no present.
no tree,
yeah, exactly.
no turkey.
Exactly, and all
What
that.
are you doing for Christmas this year?
Oh, well, I don't know. I haven't even thought about
You
it.
don't know.
I haven't even thought
Well,
about
you
it.
just told me it's rushing towards you.
Well,
you
it
better
is.
make some plans.
Well, we'll make plans later. I mean, we don't even know when we're going to be on air over Christmas, do we? So we've got to sort
that's
all
true.
that out. You know what I mean?
Well, we might not even be here. I mean, we might have died between now and then.
Well,
I mean,
that's
you
true.
know, one of
Yeah.
us might not have actually survived the
True.
autumnal season.
True.
I'll see if I can check for you what day Christmas falls on. Right?
Well, Christmas
Because
falls on. I
Christmas
can
Day-
tell you.
Well, go on.
If we're doing the Glasgow garage on the 17th,
Yeah.
which is a Saturday,
Yeah.
Christmas must be a week later on the Sunday.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christmas
Okay.
Eve is a Saturday. Christmas Day is a Sunday.
There you go. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed,
Indeed.
for letting
So
me
I'll
know.
work that one out for you. Now,
Yeah.
listen, I want to talk to you about the Red Baron.
Yeah, you've been talking about the Red Baron all day.
Yeah, now this is brilliant. This is brilliant. 100 years ago this week, the Red Baron, who was, of course, Baron von Richthofen,
Yes.
shot down his first victim.
Yeah, you say victim. Somehow it doesn't. I mean, it's probably the right word, but somehow it doesn't sound right. I think his first combatant or something would be right.
His
wouldn't it?
first, what do they
Adversary?
call it? His first hit? Was
His
it
first hit. Yeah,
his
maybe.
first hit, yeah. It was his
Victim
first hit.
just sounds like the wrong word.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know. Anyway, the point is, Manfred von Richthofen,
Yes.
for his, was the greatest, like, sort of ace of the First World War.
Yeah.
And he only got into it by accident because he wanted to be something else. But the point of the story is, this is very...
How'd you get into it by accident?
Well, because he was from a noble family, and he began the war as a cavalry officer, because that's what German nobles did. You know what I mean? But the thing was, he had the nobility of the upper classes.
Because in those days, I suppose it was quite a daring thing just to go, I think I'm going to learn how to fly a plane, because there wasn't that many people who knew how you could fly a plane anyway.
Well, I've got an explanation here. It said his vision of fighting nobly on horseback was not matched by the reality of trench warfare. So when he joined up to fight in the First World War, he thought he'd be galloping across the Somme, not buried in trenches,
up to his waist in water,
up to waist in water, and all that kind of thing.
Being by rats.
Yeah, exactly. So he applied for a transfer, writing, "I have not gone to war in order to collect cheese and eggs, but for another purpose." Because apparently, the soldiers were sent out to the farmhouses on the battlefields to get, cheese and eggs to feed the troops and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a lot
worse. I thought
worse,
he was going to complain about something else.
No. So in 1915, he looked for an alternative. He joined the flying service.
Right.
At first, he was an observer.
The Sweeney.
Hey?
Like the Sweeney.
Yeah, like the Sweeney.
Flying squad.
Well, yeah, this is the flying service, actually, not squad. Now, to start off with, he was an observer, so he sat in the front of the plane and, took pictures, actually. But by August 1916, he transferred to be a fighter. By January 1917, he had made 16 kills and formed his own squadron. In a month, the British called Bloody April. Yeah. That's not a swear word. That is like Bloody Sunday or whatever, He shot down 20 planes and gained control of a set of flamboyantly coloured planes because he was so successful, which the government gave him, and it became known as Baron von Richthofen's Flying Circus.
Oh, right.
He was so successful, they named his squadron the Flying Circus.
Because if you could shoot 20 planes down in the First World War in a given month, then presumably whoever your adversary was would have to make another 20. They didn't have that many planes, did they?
Well, they
didn't have hundreds of them.
I didn't think they did.
No.
Not like Spitfires.
No.
Anyway, on July the 2nd, he was in a fierce dogfight with an RFC squadron because there was no RAF in those days.
Right.
It was the Royal Flying Corps squadron of the Army. And a British pilot wrote, "Two of them came at us head on, and the first one was Richthofen.
Yeah.
I saw him eyeball to eyeball. I kept a steady stream of lead pouring into the nose of that machine. Richthofen was hit, and his plane crashed, but I heard later he suffered only a head wound." Right. Fearing the propaganda disaster, because he'd become such a hero back in Germany, fearing the propaganda of his death, the high command of the German army tried to ground the Red Baron, but he refused, saying that, he would give up his command and all this kind of stuff.
Well, they tried to ground him in order that he would survive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
yeah.
so he wouldn't be in any more danger.
Yeah. Anyway, it was to no avail. Pursued in a dive by two RFC planes in 1918, he was hit by a single bullet. And those guns were chucking out like 60, 70 bullets a minute, apparently.
Right.
After his death, the Flying Circus gained a new commander, Hermann Göring.
Hermann Göring, really?
Hermann Göring,
the very same.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Wow.
And the thing is, his first hit, as I say, was 100 years this week. Now...
but there's some kind of sort of anniversary sort of celebration of a type going on, right?
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
It's Lionel Morris and Tom Rees were the English and Welshmen who were the victims of his first hit, okay? Right. They and their two-seater plane became the first victims of the German fighter ace.
So are they not getting together with some relatives of his in order to sort of celebrate it?
Now representatives of all three families, so that's the German family, the English family and the Welsh family, will be meeting to mark the centenary of the event when the Red Baron began his journey to become the world's most celebrated pilot, and the Rees and Morris families, sadly, lost their sons on the same day.
Right.
When they do,
imagine what the fighting conditions must have been in those days as well, because, like you said, they have to get pretty close to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, completely unlike now, where they're firing weapons at each other from miles away.
Hundreds of miles away.
I mean, like he says, he's seeing the whites of his eyes and all that.
Yeah. I mean, it must have been so glamorous, wasn't it, eh? Not to be killed, obviously, but I mean, that's the thing. When the families get together, they will drink a toast of reconciliation from a silver goblet, which is a replica of the ones that Richthofen made to commemorate each of his skills. He had a silver goblet for each of his kills. But, I mean, considering he's shot over 60 planes down, must be an awful lot of goblets flying around somewhere.
Must have been.
Isn't that amazing?
It is an amazing story. There's never really been a proper film. I mean, I know there have been movies made of it, but there's never been sort of one movie that you could point to and go, that's the film to go and see.
Did you see the Blue Max?
I did see the Blue Max.
The Blue Max was brilliant. Now, the guy in that was, what was the name of the actor in that?
That was not him, though, was it?
No, that wasn't him.
That was somebody else.
That was somebody else. But it's based really on it was based on that sort of era.
Yeah.
And the Blue Max guy is played by a very handsome actor who later went on to play Howard Hughes in a film called You know, the book was written by Harold Robbins.
Was it Harold Robbins?
Harold Robbins wrote a book about Howard Hughes called The Carpetbaggers.
Okay.
The Carpetbaggers.
Yes, I remember that.
And that lead in that, Howard Hughes, was played by a guy with steely blue eyes and white hair. I can't remember his name now. He's a very handsome man.
Was he American? You're not thinking of Stuart Granger or something
No, I'm
like
not thinking Stuart Granger. No, I think he was like Scandinavian or German or something.
All right.
Anyway, the point of the story is, it was a fantastic film, but in addition to shooting down aeroplanes, the Blue Max hero used to go around Rogerising all his commanders' wives.
Uh-huh.
And as a punishment for this, what they did was they literally knackered his plane. So
they didn't knacker him.
Sorry?
They didn't knacker him.
Well, they did, because the plane crashed and he got killed.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So,
what you mean? His sort of underlings?
Oh, yeah.
Messed around with the plane.
Well, no, his commanding officers, whose wives were being sort of, Rogerised by the hero, the Blue Max hero, got fed up with all this behaviour. You know what I mean? It'd become too big.
With it.
Yeah, that's right. Become too big hero and all that. So they instructed their underlings to, according to the film, saw through like a bar. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be a warning to us all.
Yeah, it saw through a bar that was holding like the wings together or something like that. And this was in a demonstration for a new aeroplane which was going to finally beat the British, right? So all the hierarchy of the whole German army and government are watching this as he takes off, and then he's,
plummet straight to the ground.
And then he does this vital turn, wing snaps off, bang. That's the end of Blue Max.
That's the end of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of women in dark glasses at the funeral.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
You're listening to the Two Mics on TalkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show, as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. We are the Two Mics. Ask Porky's coming up in the next hour or so. If you haven't had a question answered by the Porkmeister, now's the time to put one in. You can post it on Facebook. You can post it at the Two Mics and just hashtag it Ask Porky. Lots and lots of people get quite a lot of what can only be described as good advice from you during this particular part of the show. But we'll get to that later on.
Yeah.
Fordy says this: for God's sake, stop talking about Christmas in August. The TV ads in October will be bad enough.
No, I totally agree. I'm really sorry about that. I just wanted to relate that story about Chris Rea.
Well, you did, but then the music started, and suddenly people get a bit fed up. Here's one from Peter. It says, Porky, did you know that the Red Baron was Polish? I'm not sure if you knew that, or even if it's true.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a very thin dividing line between people of Polish and German extraction, as in, look at a lot of the German international footballers these days and their origins.
Yes,
okay?
Indeed.
Yeah.
How about this one from Ford, who says, I lived in Camden all my life, and so many pubs have been knocked into flats or changed into clones of gastro pubs.
I know, it's terrible.
Which is true.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think people complain about too, and although you have a bit of a penchant for Wetherspoons and some other of those chains, I mean, a lot of places end up just as chains, don't they? You go down a high street, and all you've got is one chain after another.
Yes.
You know?
Slug and Lettuce, what happened to them? Are they still going?
I don't know, actually. But funnily enough, when we were in Edinburgh, somebody was saying to me that, it's so nice in Edinburgh because there's so many kind of independent shops and lots of independent little outlets, whereas in Glasgow, for example, most of what you see in a lot of the places that
pretty
you go
regulated.
There it's just very sort of known brand, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Every pub and restaurant is kind of a chain.
Sure.
Like the pizza and pasta this or the All Bar One and all that kind of thing.
Totally agree. Did you know the US Open's on at the moment?
Yes, I did actually.
Do you know how I know?
I noticed earlier on today that it was on.
Yeah, well, the reason I know is that Grant has sent a note in, and it's a plea. It's a plea. It says, "Hi, Porky. Can you do some tennis commentary, please, on Laura Robson and the US Open? You are the voice of tennis."
Yeah, well, the last time we did that, we got in a bit of trouble, you know.
Why? What happened?
Because remember, we put it out on YouTube because it was very funny you doing the phrase "hard-faced Polish woman" has never been forgotten when you were describing.
Oh, is that right?
What's her name? I think it was Radwanska.
Radwanska.
And we put it up on Two Mics TV on the old YouTube channel.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And believe it or not, it was from the Australian Open, which would have been started this year.
That's right.
And when the people who filmed it, I think it was some Australian TV company, saw that you'd used their footage.
Yes, that's right.
Even though it was your voice.
Yes.
They kicked off about it.
Yeah, they did.
And they didn't ask for it to be taken down, but they just wanted a credit.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
And did we give it to them?
I think we did, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, a number of people who've nicked some of the stuff we've done,
I know.
the Silliman Challenge in particular,
Yes.
we don't seem to get much joy out of them.
The Lad Bibles nicked it. Joe.co.uk's nicked it.
That's right.
And didn't give us the credit for it.
Yeah.
Although they did give us a little bit of publicity for it in the end. But
exactly.
still, I mean, millions and millions of hits from
Absolutely.
that thing.
Now, I've got some good news here because, everyone accused me of upsetting our listeners and all this kind of stuff. But, of course, I do sometimes get to the heart of the matter. Lucy has sent in another tweet. Yeah. It says, thanks for explaining, Porky. We love you, really. Really? And that was me explaining, of course, that... whilst I admire young people who want to be adventurous and all that, I sometimes believe if they go off too quickly on these gap years, they might find themselves behind the 8 ball when it comes to, picking up their careers. Quite as simple as that.
Don't you think in the end, though, that it's down to the individual? If you're a relatively sort of, forward-looking, intelligent, capable young person, or even old person, you'll always do okay. But if you're a bit of a dolt, it doesn't matter what you do. You can go and get a great degree, or you can take a gap year. Sure. If you sit in front of a prospective employer and appear to be a bit of a dolt, you're not going to get a job anyway.
And yes, well, it could be the case. Lucy also seems to accept that students don't do an awful lot of work in the 40-hour working week.
She's admitted that.
Well, she sort of says I understand now. Thank you very much indeed. So that is.
Well, that's hardly admitting anything, then, is it? So you're kind of twisting the words.
No, not really. She does not seem to be at all discombobulated by what I've said. Put it that way.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah. By the way, I meant to ask you whether you are still recovering from the Edinburgh experience, or whether you feel as though we are now fully over that and ready to move on to bigger and better things.
Well, it's difficult to move on to anything bigger and better than the Edinburgh Festival.
Well, it's true.
Because it is so incredibly popular around the world and all that. I mean, I couldn't believe the number of people who were there from... I mean, the act that preceded us on each night was a bunch of, 12 American people who were doing made up their own musical. It was a
sort of comic musical improv.
But they'd actually paid to come, paid to go on stage. Yeah. We didn't pay to go there. We were asked to go there on a commercial basis.
And we will be paid for being there.
We're now waiting for the checks to start flowing in, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so we can get busy with, some serious Christmas preparation.
We did miss the fireworks. I know you don't really like fireworks, do you?
Well, I don't mind them, but I can watch them for about 5 minutes, and then all the ooh, ah, and all that kind of stuff is, well, hang on, we saw that saw that 30
Well, do you know
seconds
that
ago.
during the whole month of August, when the festival was on, they had firework display every night.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
I only managed to see it once.
Was it 60 tons of fireworks or something?
I don't know what it was, but I was out on the balcony of my flat, which was down in Leith, right?
Yes.
So I had quite a good view looking up to the top
you had a balcony?
I had a balcony, yeah.
You didn't get me a balcony in the place I stayed in.
Well, you didn't ask for a balcony.
Well, I didn't know there were balconies available.
Well, I didn't specifically ask for a balcony, just so I happened to have a balcony. Okay. To be honest, when I booked it, I didn't know I had one.
No,
so it was very nice.
Right.
Because it meant I could obviously go out and smoke out there, because there's no smoking inside.
Exactly.
Saved me having to go 5 floors down onto the street.
Well, that's true.
But so I could watch this, but I heard this noise. My daughter and I were in sort of talking and chatting, listening to a bit of music, and she's like, we thought it was somebody knocking on the door. And she said, what's that noise? We went outside, and it was a firework. We saw one firework going up.
Someone's knocking on the door.
What's that?
Somebody
just another soul song.
Anyway, sorry, no, that was a Paul McCartney song. Okay. Go on.
Anyway, so we went back in, and then it was one of those, every time we went out, we kept missing it.
Right, I see.
And I'd quite like to have seen one of the big fireworks.
You hadn't been drinking at this stage.
There'd been a bit of drinking, but it wasn't so much that, but it was the timing, because they seemed to then put all the small fireworks on, the ones that you can't see. So if you're standing in front of them, that's fine. But if you're 2 miles away,
that's right,
it wasn't any good. So I was a bit disappointed about that.
Got to have aerial fireworks to be able to take them all in.
Kirk says, did MG finally get offered the editor's job? And I think he's talking about the one at... Camera, yeah. No, I didn't, actually. No. There was another one I got shortlisted for.
Yes.
But for some reason, I think they just thought I was too young.
Yes.
Cause as much as you claim that you were kind of a child prodigy.
Yes.
I wasn't so much a child prodigy, but I just was applying for a lot of jobs.
Yeah, that's right.
At the age of 21 or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very glad I didn't get it.
Yeah, exactly. You say you're very glad you didn't get it, but I mean, who knows what fate might have had in store for you had you got that one. You never know. It's a sliding doors thing, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah.
It's a sliding doors thing.
I mean, if I'd got the job at the Grocer, for example, which is the the in-house magazine of the grocery trade, I don't think it would have really suited me.
I think the headquarters of that is in Sutton, in Stockbroker Belt, Surrey, near to where I live, and well, not near to where I live, but it's a town down there, and there's a huge development behind the station in Sutton, which is a publishing house, and they publish all those sort of magazines. Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of the places I applied for jobs for was run by Haymarket, which was the one that was owned by Heseltine.
Haymarket. That was started by Michael Heseltine.
Yeah,
it grew up to one of the biggest publishing empires in this country.
Absolutely.
And you know what? When he first came out of Cambridge University and became a businessman, sort of making money, and then started buying property and this kind of stuff. Somebody in another set of political memoirs said, I always knew that Michael Heseltine would become a millionaire, And they said, why? He said, well...
He was already one when he started, wasn't he?
Well, no, he wasn't actually. He made all his own money. But he said, we went around there one night and he said, OK, chaps, I've just got a bit of work to do. And at the time, he was running a guest house in Earl's Court, which was the start of his property empire. Right. Because he bought it and then started, renting it out.
So he was always going to be somebody with an eye for the main chance.
Yeah. And they said, what sort of work do you have to do at this time of night? It was 11 o'clock at night. He said, I have to dilute the butter with the margarine.
Oh, well, there you go.
It's brilliant.
I've got to stop you there, though, because we're up against the time. This is the Two Mics.
You're listening to the Two Mics on talkSPORT.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show, as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. Good evening, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry, you're listening to the Two Mics. We're here all week in this slot, and next week as well, 7 to 10 p.m. It seems to suit us quite well. We could go for a little drink afterwards, and we don't have to worry too much about whether we get enough sleep. We'll be finding out...
Sorry, did you mention drink there somewhere?
Yeah, a little bit of dring afterwards, perhaps. And,
only an unwinder.
An unwinder, exactly. But,
yeah.
Obviously then you have to go home, because the pubs will shut at 11 o'clock. It'll be all good.
Yeah.
We'll have a Metro paper review coming up a little bit later on with Chris Cowley. We're going to be talking to Ken Lovett as well. He's the Albany Bureau Chief for the New York Daily News about Mark Chapman. Yep. And, of course, it's Ask Porky as well. So if you haven't yet got your questions in, you can hashtag them Ask Porky, send them at the Two Mics on Twitter, or put them on our Facebook page as well. You're listening to the Two Mics with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. Now, you and I both remember very well, Mr. Parry, the day, or the evening, we should say, that Mark Chapman killed John Lennon.
December the 12th, 1980.
Outside of the Dakota building on the Upper West Side of New York City. Yeah. I was actually living in England at the time. I think you probably were as well.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Very, very long time ago, but still one of those events that I think most people always remember exactly where they were when they heard that it had happened. Yeah. Just the other day, Mark Chapman was refused parole for the ninth time of asking. And we're going to talk now to Ken Lovett, who's with the New York Daily News, a paper we both know terribly well. Exactly. He's the Albany Bureau Chief. Ken, a very good evening to you.
Good to be here. Hi.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Now, it was only a few weeks ago that we read that John Hinckley had been kind of allowed to be released into the custody of his mother, I think. Obviously a slightly different case. He tried to assassinate President Ronald Reagan. Why is it, I suppose, I would ask you first, that Mark Chapman thinks that he will ever get parole, and why does he keep applying for it?
Well, I don't think he necessarily thinks he ever will. He comes up automatically every 2 years. They bring him before the parole board. He has said he's willing to, spend as much time as they think he deserves in prison. And so he came up again, and for the ninth time they said, we're not releasing him.
Ken, isn't it true that every time it comes up, Yoko Ono launches the campaign to make sure he stays behind bars forever?
Yeah, she sends a letter in, and basically she says, if you release him, I'll be afraid for my own safety. John Lennon's son, he has two sons, for their safety. Yeah. And then also she says she would be afraid for Mark David Chapman's safety. Worried that some Beatles fan would seek revenge if he's out on the street.
Yeah, well, that's not beyond the realms of possibility. I saw a fascinating piece, Ken, over in this country, I think it was about 6 months ago, that Chapman now has quite a remarkable lifestyle inside jail where he's actually allowed conjugal rights with his wife, and she visits like once every 3 months or something. They're allowed to spend like nights together.
Yeah, she lives in Hawaii, but she comes in a couple of times a year, and he's allowed conjugal visits. He's allowed, it's called the Family Reunion Program. He's allowed visits with his stepfather, and they take him. It's a program that he's been in, I don't know, probably more than a decade now. Yeah,
and that's slightly at odds, isn't it, with the stories that we know about, and also that we hear frequently about in terms of when you get sentenced to life in prison in the United States, it means life imprisonment, and you have a pretty ghastly existence in solitary confinement. I mean, he's obviously not suffering from any of that.
No, it's not. He basically would like to be in the general population. And they've basically told him no. They keep him apart from most of the other prisoners. But, he's a porter. He works. He's out of his cell 3 hours a day when he's not working. And he gets these visits with his wife. The amazing thing to me is, this happened in 1980, and she stayed with him.
Yeah, she's still with him, yeah. Ken, tell me this. Has he ever expressed remorse or admitted he made a terrible mistake for killing John Lennon? Or does he still stick to the fact that he was unbalanced at the time and wanted to be John Lennon, so he had to get rid of the real thing?
No, he has expressed remorse. He once really angered Yoko because this was a few years ago during the Parole hearing or during an interview, I forget which, he had said that if John Lennon were alive, he would forgive him. And Yoko was like, you shouldn't be speaking for, the man you killed. Yeah. So, no, he says, look, I was looking for fame. I know now it was the wrong thing to do. And he says all the right things. And he says if he was let out, even though he had a list of other people that he was going to target if he didn't get to John Lennon, including Johnny Carson and Elizabeth Taylor, he says that if he comes out, he wouldn't represent a threat to anybody, but he really doesn't expect to come out.
And is there any likelihood, I mean, you and I may be having the same conversation 2 years from now and maybe 4 years from now, maybe 6 years from now. I mean, is there any does anybody campaign on his behalf, as it were, to say that he's obviously now changed character?
Yeah, there's some pastor that writes on his behalf. He got about 5 letters in the last 2 years of people who say he should be let go. Those who say he should be kept in, it was only in the last couple of years, only about 2 letters. But the reality is, over the last decade or so, it's been 80 letters. People, I think, especially in New York, where John Lennon lived and was so entrenched in the community, I think it would be a big blow, and I would be very surprised if he is let out anytime soon.
Well, I think the thing is, Ken, it would be political suicide, wouldn't it, for the public official who made that decision? Because over here in Britain, we have sort of child killers, very famous, infamous, I should say. A guy called Ian Brady, Myra Hindley. She's died. He's still alive. But any Home Secretary in this country who let them out would like finish his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, I tend to agree, especially in these high-profile cases. But as you mentioned in the lead-in, I was surprised John Hinckley got out of jail.
Yeah, exactly.
And the guy who shot Reagan. But that's a federal case, and this is a state case, and it would just be very surprising if he got out.
Yeah, indeed.
And also in Hinckley's case, I think I'm right in saying that he was being allowed to have, sort of limited visits outside of the prison with his mother because he was considered to be, there are sort of mental health issues at hand, but they've decided he's not dangerous anymore, which to me is always a slightly kind of interesting road to go down.
Because isn't it? Yeah.
How can you say that somebody who once was so, mentally unstable that you thought shooting the President of the United States was a great idea, but he's all right now?
Well, you're not dangerous until you are dangerous.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that Mark David Chapman. No one knew who he was or what he was about until he did it in 1980. Until he shot John Lennon. And I'm sure if you talked to people back then who knew him in Hawaii, they'd probably say, "Yeah, he was off," but I would never have thought he would have shot someone.
Right. Sure.
Especially someone like John Lennon.
Sure.
But, you don't know what lurks in their mind.
No. Has he spent all his time behind bars in the same jail? Because in this country, you tend to get moved around a bit, so you don't become a celebrity.
He's moved once. He was at one prison for a number of years, and then he moved to another one upstate New York. But he's been there for a long time now, and I think, it's hard for him to become a celebrity in that way because, like I said, even though he's asked to be in the general population, he's not. They keep him isolated because they don't know what's going to happen with him. Someone may feel like they can get some fame by taking out Mark David Chapman, so they kind of separate him. But, he's learned how to build wheelchairs, apparently, and repair wheelchairs. He's a porter. He's helped inmates. He's been a model inmate. There's no doubt about that. He hasn't had an incident report since 1994, and even in when they've denied him parole, they say, yes, he's taken education courses, he's been a model prisoner behind bars, but they feel that releasing him would really send a bad message, and it would kind of be a mockery of the law.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you're absolutely right. One final question, if I may, Ken, on a slightly different subject. A big story in your part of the world, but also here as well, is the latest about the disgraced former New York Congressman Anthony Weiner. Stories around today saying that, this latest kind of text gate or whatever you want to call it, was actually, he told his wife that he was aware of some new pictures that are going to be coming out.
Yes, this is the third time. He has now lost. He was a congressman, and he had to resign because of the sexting scandal. he was running for mayor, and basically he killed his chances because he did it again, and now he lost his marriage because of it. He and his wife and their son were vacationing in the Hamptons over the weekend, which is a swanky part of Long Island, and they got a call from the newspaper that this was coming out. He told his wife, and that was the end of the marriage.
Right.
I mean, there's obviously a compulsion there that he can't control. I mean, he literally has lost everything. He's lost his family. He's lost his job. He can never run for office anymore.
Right.
And he's lost the media work he was doing for not only TV, but my newspaper he was writing columns for. And he lost that as well after this last incident.
Right. And presumably, I mean, there are those cynical amongst us who would say that his wife finally ditched him because of her position in the Hillary Clinton campaign, which obviously was going to be damaged by it if she didn't leave him.
Well, I mean, the reality is, if she wasn't a top staffer to Hillary Clinton, would we be talking about this anymore?
Exactly.
He would just be some washed-up congressman, and she would be doing something else, so it wouldn't have the same impact. I'm sure the Clintons are not shedding any tears that she made this move, but I think, the last straw was he sent out a sexting picture, a sex with his son in it,
right.
His young son. And I think for any mother, that's going to be the last straw.
Yeah,
it would be.
Just absolutely unbelievable. Ken, listen, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
for
Ken.
taking the time to talk to us. Ken Lovett there.
Yeah.
He's the bureau chief in Albany for the New York Daily News. I don't think I ever got to Albany.
Oh, I got up there.
I used to go to Buffalo quite a bit.
No,
I never actually went to Albany.
I don't know why, but I went to Albany a couple of times. I think I went on the train, actually. Yeah. But, I mean, the one thing I remember is it's the first time I realised that almost every state capital has a mini
Capitol building
with a gold dome on the top.
Called the Capitol.
Yeah, called the Capitol.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Quite confusing after a while,
it is. I went to Sacramento.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise Sacramento was the capital of California until I got there. And then I saw the so-called Capitol building. There's one in every state capital.
There is.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. And Anthony Weiner, as we just heard Ken Lovett there saying, is probably now going to disappear from trace. We may not hear of him ever again.
Probably not.
But unfortunate for him that the Daily News had a column written by him because it was the New York Post that actually published the pictures.
Exactly.
Can you imagine the conversation with the editor that morning?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So this guy that we've got as a columnist has been doing more of this stuff.
Yeah, he's like a pervert.
And our rival paper has published the pictures.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
There'll be a few heads being tipped around.
Would be, I'm afraid. Yeah,
absolutely right.
Short-term careerism.
Now, coming up next, it is time for Ask a Porky.
It is.
You're listening to the Two Mics on TalkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged.
Not just anybody. Help. I need someone. Help.
That music can only mean one thing. It is, of course, the very popular feature that we do here on the Two Mics, which is Ask a Porky. This is where very, very many of you are able to ask questions which you cannot get the answers to anywhere else.
Indeed.
They could be about your own personal life, or they could be about just questions in general that nobody else knows the answer to. And the Porkmeister here is here to help. Hence the song by the Beatles. Now, we've got, as usual, Mr. Parry, quite a wide-ranging selection of questions.
Good.
Some of which are ones that maybe even you won't be able to answer.
I will, don't worry. It's a broad base, and I'd like to hear from every section of society.
Yes, absolutely right. So, let's kick off with one from Mark, who's on Facebook, right?
Okay.
And basically, as ever, if I can ask you to be as succinct as possible and as brief as possible, while being as informative as possible.
Indeed.
He says this: thinking about forming a bird-watching team for Tokyo 2020. Any tactics greatly received, very gratefully received, and also if pigeon-brain transplants are available on the NHS, will these be allowed?
Well, the answer is that I used bird watching as an example of I thought that canoeing was, a pretty pointless sort of sport to include in the Olympics because I said it was a hobby. And I used the analogy with bird watching or rambling in the Amazon forest because, of course, the Olympics are in Brazil. But you shouldn't take me seriously on that. That was just really to illustrate. No, shouldn't take me seriously.
What do you mean shouldn't take you seriously?
To illustrate that I thought canoeing doesn't have a place in the Olympics. Bird watching is for bird watchers. They're called twitchers. They're good people. They don't do anybody any harm. I'm all for bird watching, but certainly not in the Olympics.
Okay, here's one from Martin. He says, Porky, who from the past or present day would you like to go on a bladderation session with?
Well, I saw a man nominate Oliver Reed as perhaps the greatest ever drinking partner today in some survey that I was reading. Personally, I wouldn't like to go out and drink it with Oliver Reed. I thought he was a show-off. I thought he was a big head. I've seen him. I've seen some clips of him actually recently on a show they put together. Oliver Reed's, most dangerous moments and all that. And to me, he looked like the sort of bloke who often pretended to be drunk when he wasn't. And for that reason, I think he was a bit of a fraud.
Okay, that's very harsh on Oliver Reed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but I thought he was.
Ill of the dead.
Yeah.
Here's one from Glenn. As a man of the people and someone who fundamentally values hard work, determination, and willpower to overcome all odds, can you tell your millions of listeners why you despise Nigel Farage so much, Porky?
I don't despise Nigel Farage. I don't despise him at all, but I think that this image of, a pint of beer in one hand, a cigarette in the other, I talk openly and frankly about the British people, is not the sort of politician I feel comfortable with. Politicians, to me, do not have to be men of the people. They have to be different because we're electing them as leaders. Theresa May is different to us. She's got the mark of leadership all over her. I thought Tony Blair was different to us. He had the mark of leadership all over him. I do not want our politicians to be men of the people, and that's why I didn't really take to Nigel Farage.
Okay. Here's one from Martin. He says, Mike, how would a sophisticated, suave gentleman like yourself romance a woman to give her a perfect romantic evening?
Well, romantic evenings can come into several different categories, but basically what you do is you find a good restaurant with good food, very decent wine, be generous as you possibly can. One thing women like is generosity. They don't like you. Quite often women have had partners in the past who said, should we split the bill and all this kind of stuff. Not in my book at all. You be generous, you be good-humoured, you be polite, you be courteous, you take them to a decent restaurant, and most of all, depending on what your ambitions are for the rest of the night, you make sure they get home safely.
Yes, indeed. Here's one from Pierre, which was, funnily enough, on the subject of John Lennon. What did John Lennon mean when he said, life is what happens when you are busy making other plans? It's always puzzled me.
No, it's a fantastic quote. What he meant is that basically we're all concentrating on things all the time, and we take our eye off the ball on important issues. So, for instance, your marriage can drift away because you're concentrating so much on your job.
Yeah.
You're concentrating so much on having to travel with your job. You're not keeping your eye on things. Things can just go haywire, and all of a sudden, the minute you wake up and say, what happened to my marriage, it's gone. It can happen in all sorts of areas. Sometimes you can support a football team to the extent where it takes over your life, and you suddenly realise your home life's gone, maybe even your job's gone. What John Lennon meant was, keep your eye on the ball, because if you don't, things will happen and they'll come up and smack you in the back of the head.
Maybe one for Anthony Weiner, that one.
Yes.
Perhaps you should have taken your advice.
Yes.
Speaking of football, a different Martin says this, can I come to a game with you in your box at Everton FC, please? Any game, I'll be there.
I haven't got a box at Everton FC. I've got a seat in a very nice part of the stadium and a table in a very nice lounge. It's not my box, of course. There's a good 60 other people in it, something like that. But it's a very nice facility. And whilst I enjoyed it enormously, I realise that not everybody can afford to do that sort of thing. The pure and honest football fan who saves up his money and goes every week is the salt of the earth supporter.
OK. Here's one from John, who says, could Porky please tell me how come I am sitting on the tram from Princess Street to the airport, that's in Edinburgh, listening to MG, the Edinburgh expert, on a podcast telling me it only goes to Murrayfield?
Well, I don't know, because, of course, old MG, that's yourself, sitting opposite me in the studio here, knows a lot more about Edinburgh than I do. The trams have evolved over the years. I don't quite know where they went, because you don't see too many trams in Edinburgh, to be honest.
I can tell you what you didn't see, and you didn't see a tram arriving into the terminal
at
Edinburgh Airport.
Definitely not.
My contention is that they go somewhere near the airport, but they don't actually go to the airport.
I didn't see any trams go near the airport. I didn't see anybody giving us directions saying, get the tram, it goes straight to the airport. In fact, you see very few trams. We saw more trams driving in from the airport when we got there, disappearing over this horizon, than we ever saw when we were in Edinburgh.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw a load of them at the tram depot, but not anywhere else.
Yeah.
Roberto says this on Facebook. Hello, Porky. I've received a leaflet through my letterbox from one of our neighbours, asking for help in finding their missing pet tortoise.
Yeah.
Do you think that someone who allows their tortoise to run away and escape should be allowed to keep pets?
Well, I've had this thing before about missing pets and all that kind of stuff. People nail up these appeals all the time on trees for missing cats and all that kind of stuff. If you've got a pet, then you've got to understand the emotional tie to that pet is very, very strong indeed. You shouldn't go around bleating if things happen to the pet. As for a tortoise, well, the problem with tortoises is it is literally the story of the tortoise and the hare. Because you think tortoises hardly move anywhere at any time at all, you take your eye off the ball. When you take your eye off the ball, the tortoise has gone through a hole in the fence, and by the time you've woken up the next morning, 8 hours later, the tortoise is gone. Take care of your tortoise.
Yeah, I would say that. I lost a tortoise when I was a child.
Yeah,
Mark says this, I have a phobia of needles, but need dental work doing. What's the best way to get over it? And please don't tell me to man up.
Do you know the best way to get over it is you don't need to see a needle. In dental treatment these days, because you're basically, lying backwards or something like that.
Yeah, you're thinking about it.
No, well, don't close your eyes and let the dentist get on with it. I mean, the point is, if you don't have a needle in your mouth before dental treatment, mate, you might as well go and audition for the role in The Marathon Man, because it's going to be very, very painful, your dental treatment, if you don't have your injections.
Okay. William says, Porky, I'm off to the Costa Brava next week. Now I want to visit Barcelona football stadium, but the other half isn't having it. How can I get her to change her mind?
Well, if I were you, I wouldn't, because quite frankly, a holiday like that, if you're only going with your partner in life, it's got to be a joint expedition. I mean, the only thing you can do, and I've done this on a lot of occasions in the past, is you say to your partner, if your partner's a lady and you're married or you're a couple or something like that, you say, look, darling, I've got a fantastic idea. I'm going to pay for you today to go on a pampering, one of these pampering things that ladies go to. Yeah, spa day, that's right, yeah. I'm going to pay for you to go, have your nails done and all that, have a spa and all that kind of stuff. I'm shooting up the road to have a look at Barcelona. I think you're back here at 6 o'clock and I'm taking you out for dinner.
Good idea. White says this, with the pesky wasp season approaching, should I take my portable flamethrower to the pub for those al fresco sessions?
Well, I know what you mean there. You're taking the mickey, but I mean, the point is, wasps can be extremely dangerous. If I were you, I think there's nothing wrong whatsoever with carrying a little tin of wasp repellent around with you on these hot, summery nights. I advise it.
Here's one from Ian. He says, I've got an 8 hours till my flight from Mallorca to Manchester. Do I stay up and get bladderated or sleep and be a good dad?
I see. Flying out on your holiday.
Well, he's flying back, I think.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I can't quite understand why he's waiting 8 hours, but I mean...
Well, because his flight's probably in the middle of the night.
Yeah, so 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, I tell you what, if you're with children, stay away from bladderation. If you've got responsibilities to get your children home after a holiday, last thing you do is go near the old the champagne bar or the booze wagon. Seriously, your responsibility is to your children. Get your children home, get them safely back in their beds, back in Blighty, and then arrange to go and have a few sherbets with your mates the day after.
Fergus says this, would you rather support Liverpool for a season or live with old MG for a year?
I'd rather live with old MG forever than support Liverpool for one day.
I thought you'd go the other way.
No. Forget that, pal. No way in the world.
Do I ever say?
Well, probably not, but I'm telling you, you wouldn't get me supporting Liverpool for 1 minute.
Yeah. OK, here's one from Tim, who says, I've been approached to invest in an internet sports TV station. I'm told it's a surefire money spinner.
Yes.
Should I invest?
Well, the answer is find out who you're investing with, because the crucial decision you make in any business arrangement is, firstly, it's better to go in on your own, because only you then can make the decisions and you live or die by your own decisions. When you go with other people, you've got to make sure they're the absolutely right people to go into business with. You've got to be sure of their credentials. I made a terrible mistake, and unfortunately, I threw my lot in with others who simply didn't know how to run the venture that I joined up to. Simple as that.
Here's one from Pete, who says, what to do this Friday night? Pub with my mates for beer and women, or stay in alone for the two mics?
You can do both. What I would do if I were you is I'd get out and socialise a bit and have a few beers and all that kind of stuff. Remember, all these shows come down on a podcast, or make an arrangement to catch up on us if the programme's being rerun on another medium within a few hours of you coming home.
Yeah. Now, this one's a bit more of sort of, I would say, philosophical one. Okay. From Roberta. Porky, what becomes of the broken-hearted?
Yeah, well, that's a very good point, actually, because what usually becomes of the broken-hearted is they either wilt and fall by the wayside, or they get back into business, get back in the saddle, so to speak, and get on with it. The trouble with being broken-hearted is it slows down all your ambitions in life. It can be a terrible thing to have fallen in love and failed, or to have fallen in love and to have been rejected, but I'm afraid it's going to happen to everybody in life, and you've just got to put it behind you and get on with it. I know that sounds simple, but honestly, that's the only answer.
Another philosophical one. Hey, Porky, when does a peak become a plateau?
Well, a peak becomes a plateau when you have got to the stage of life where you think, I have arrived. It's a dangerous moment when your peak plateaus out, because the problem is when you think you've got there, that's when the world will come back and smack you in the face. You've heard the old expression about, it's tough getting to the top, it's even tougher staying there. That, believe me, is a truism in life. Never feel that you can rest on your laurels. If you're not learning every day about life and about the job you're in, you're finished.
Lee says this, finally, I suppose, we'll have to wrap it up after this one. I'm addicted to you two. Do I need help?
No, you don't need help. And in fact, if you listen to a lot of what MG and I say, and the way we lead our lives and the way we respond to problems and adapt to situations, we, generally speaking, get more of it right than we do wrong. We can be classed as winners, and there are an awful lot of losers in life.
Is that it?
Yes.
OK, so you don't need to seek help at all. Thank you very much for all those that ask a Porky questions. Anyone that we didn't get to, we'll try and put them into the mix for next week. We'll do it at the same time. Coming up next, though, we're going to have a look at what's going on in Metro tomorrow morning. We're going to talk to Chris Cowley, who's going to let us know what the big stories are.
You're listening to the Two Mics on talkSport.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. Coming up, of course, we've got lots more, but let's look ahead to tomorrow's top stories. And joining us now, it's the Assistant Editor of Metro, Chris Cowley. Chris, a very good evening to you.
Good evening.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. The one story, I suppose, that's been dominating the news all day, you're still picking up on, and it's the Apple tax bill, which is quite extraordinary, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, it works out that they paid 0.005% on their tax bill, so that equates to roughly about 50 quid for every £1 million in profit.
Yes, not a bad deal, you might say.
A very good deal, I would say, very much so. And you can see why they went to Ireland for that, because they obviously negotiated that with the Irish government.
And one of the strangest reactions to it is actually from the Irish government, who, despite the fact that they're being given a significant amount of tax money back, which I think would be bigger than the amount they spend on their entire National Health Service, they're actually appealing it on the grounds that they think it's fair.
Well, that's right. Yeah, they think. Well, you know, I mean, the thing about Ireland is that they want to attract business to their country, and they offer such sweet deals for big business like Google and Apple to go there. So, you know, but we can't really have big companies not paying their share of tax, you know, through these so-called sweetheart deals, can we?
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. The Irish government fear that Apple will push off, particularly as one of the issues, Chris, post-Brexit, is that the British government are being encouraged to keep cutting corporation tax. So it's a very political thing, isn't it?
Well, you know, there's being mooted that if we were to leave Europe, when we leave Europe, you know, it would be much more of an incentive for the likes of Apple to come to us.
That's right. Now, a mate of mine in the broadcasting world is Jeremy Vine, Chris. I do a bit with him sometimes on his very popular Radio 2 show. What sort of bothers he got himself into?
Well, he likes to cycle to work, it seems. So here he is. He's in Kensington on his bicycle with his all his gear on, his helmet, with his camera on his helmet and a camera on the bike.
Oh, he's one of the guys with a camera on his helmet. You don't normally like those people, do you?
Well, they all have it now. They all have it now. Yeah, go on, yeah.
Well, they have to kind of protect themselves, and in this case, this is what's happened. He's cycling down the middle of the road. He says to avoid cars' doors being opened, and there's some irate woman behind him who then sort of pulls up and then has a go, starts shouting abuse at him and telling him to get off the road, blah blah blah.
Well, for being in the middle of the road, is this?
Yeah. And so holding her up. Now, you know, it's kind of. He's got all the evidence, and he says, well, he's reported to the police because of the way she reacted to him, and there was a sort of allegedly, according to looking at the film, she kind of pointed a finger at him in a gun kind of way to sort of like pulling a trigger.
Oh, really?
You know, it was kind of threatening, but. You know, I suppose there are two issues here. Is really that you know you can't hog the road as a cyclist, but then she completely overreacted. It seems, and
people do get very irate though, don't they, on the roads? I mean, you see it all the time where people get into rows. Yeah, but people get into rows. The cyclists get into. I mean, everybody needs to just calm down a bit, don't they? Was there
no cycle lane on this particular stretch of road, Chris, or do we not know?
No, there wasn't. No, and you know he was cycling so she couldn't get past him.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you know, there are a lot of people out there who absolutely hate the cyclists, and they sort of moan and say things like, "Well, they don't pay road tax, but they think they own the road."
Yeah.
But you know, I think everybody just needs to take a chill pill and be a little bit more considerate of each other, because you know, there's so many people, certainly in the streets of London. You know, there's quite a few deaths each year from people on bicycles.
There are.
Well, I mean, our
sadly,
newsreader Victoria was telling us just before she left that the other day a bus actually hit her handlebars.
That's right, yeah.
You know, which is about as close as you can get without running somebody over.
Indeed.
I think in this heat, though, everybody's tempers are a little bit shorter than they should be.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Now, one thing that will get people hot under the collar, and perhaps more understandably, is this woman, Katrina Percy, who's Chief Executive of Under Fire Southern Health NHS Foundation Trust. She's resigned, saying that her position has become untenable. But unlike most people who resign, she's still getting a lot of money.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be really angry about this one. As you say, she's kind of stepped down as chief executive and taken a lesser job as a strategic advisor, as a consultant, in other words, but retains her £240,000 salary. And on her watch, the trust was responsible. Well, not responsible, but they failed to investigate the unexpected deaths of hundreds of patients. Yeah. Not just a few, hundreds, they're saying in this report.
But this whole thing is a racket.
I think it was up to 1,000.
Yeah, up to 1,000. This whole thing is a racket, Chris. How many stories we read over the last 2 or 3 years? You'll have been responsible for publishing a lot of them, where these people in the NHS, they get sacked or made redundant from one NHS trust, and a few weeks later, they're taken on in just such a senior position at another NHS trust, having picked up £400,000 in redundo. It's an absolute legal racket.
Yes, it makes my blood boil, and one of the thing is about the NHS. People are moaning about this, that, and the next thing. Patients have to come first, and yet it seems like there's a hell of a lot of people like her being paid to be a consultant. Now, according to the Southern Health Trust statement, she's going to be doing vital work for which she is ideally suited. Well, it's not cleaning out the trust, really. There's a culture there that needs to be sorted, and it doesn't appear to be sorted if you're just going to move somebody sideways and still pay the same amount of money.
Well, that's it. Norman Lamb, the Lib Dem MP a spokesman for their health situation, says that it was a rotten culture. And if she's part of that rotten culture, then surely she should have no place there. But again, it's not clear from the stories that I've read so far who's supposed to be in charge of all this.
No, it really. I think like this trust, like a lot of the NHS, they need to bring somebody in who's I don't know, somebody who can actually sort out the mess. It's a huge mess in this country, and one of the most interesting facts that a lot of people probably don't realise is that the NHS is the third biggest employer in the world, and it comes after something like the Chinese military and the American military
and the Indian railway system.
It's kind of ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous, and to allow these people to walk away with these huge amounts of money is legalised theft, and it shouldn't be allowed. And somebody, you're absolutely right, has got to get a grip of it.
You get a feeling that perhaps somebody will act on this before the end of the week, don't you?
You'd hope so.
Well, I think so. Otherwise, where as patients, where do we get? How can we trust that they're going to be doing the right thing?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Exactly right. Chris, thanks very much indeed. That was the pay-per-view with Metro. Get your fix of news, sport and showbiz every weekday morning and pick up your free copy of Metro tomorrow. Now, hard to believe, Mr. Parry, the show's almost over already. Well,
there's a bit more time to tell you that I bought a tub of salt today.
Oh, yeah? A tub of salt?
Yeah.
What do you mean a tub?
A tub of salt.
What? How do you mean a tub, though? A tub I would normally think is like a tub of butter.
No, a circular tub, like a cylinder.
Oh, like a cylindrical thing. Yeah, okay.
Tub, right, yeah. And guess what it had in it?
What had it? Salt in it?
Hebridean sea salt.
Hebridean sea salt? Why did you buy that? Did you buy it by mistake?
No. I thought, well, we've been in Scotland recently, and I thought, this is great. And I've always had ambitions to get to the Highlands and the Islands. Yeah. And it's Scotland's first sea salt company. Right. It hails from the banks of Loch Erisort, which is on the Isle of Lewis.
Right, okay.
Did you know that?
I've not been to the Isle of Lewis, actually. No, I've not been that far out.
And the salt is treated with peat smoking before you actually get it.
Really?
So, do you think it sounds great?
It does sound great. Yeah, I bet it was expensive, though.
Yeah, I think it was.
I mean, you probably could have bought an ordinary tub of salt, if you like, for about 50p.
Yeah.
But you probably paid about £4 for that, haven't you?
Probably, I don't know, because it just goes on the bill, really, doesn't it? You don't really look at these things.
Right.
But isn't that amazing?
It is.
And I thought to myself...
Well, there are people out there who now consider buying different types of salt to be quite a sort of specified and specific sort of knowledge. And people have different types of salt for different types of cooking.
Do you know why it's come so highly recommended?
Why?
It's used at Glen Eagles Hotel.
Oh, is it?
Now, have you been there?
I have indeed.
Right.
I know it well.
Right. Well, they use Hebridean sea salt. How about that?
Well, Andrew Fairley, who's a very famous Scottish chef,
Yes.
used to have the restaurant up at Glen Eagles, and I'm not sure if he still does.
Who's this?
Andrew Fairley, his name is.
Oh, yeah.
A very famous Scottish chef.
Right.
And, he's got places, in London, but Glen Eagles was his main kind of haunt.
Right.
And it's a beautiful part of the world.
Okay.
Golf courses are magnificent, and the food up there is great.
Yeah, well, I think this is great because the thing is, I think the salt that I probably use at the moment probably comes from a salt mine in Congleton, in Cheshire.
Could do.
And that doesn't sound very...
It's not very exotic,
healthy
is it?
to me, or exotic.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to think that this has been drained from... By the way, how can... Is a lock... I thought a lock was like fresh water.
Well, there are some saltwater locks, though, because some of them have got an inlet into the sea.
Oh, this must be a saltwater lock there, because what they do is they take the water out and they dry the water out, if you see what I mean.
They dry it out.
Well, it evaporates, and what's left in the pan is the salt. And that's the Hebridean sea salt. That's pretty good,
when I was in Mallorca...
I'm pretty impressed with that.
When I was in Mallorca, there were salt crystals formed on some of the rocks around this little beach that we went to, because the sea would come up and then the salt water would evaporate. Yeah. And actually, what was left behind was really, really attractive. Looked like the sort of crystals that you would get in a very expensive sea salt thing.
Yeah, so
and
which you then grind out onto your chips.
You then grind out, so you probably could have actually collected those. Well, one of my sons did, but we didn't try it on any of the food.
Is that right?
But it's quite fascinating stuff.
Yeah, indeed.
We'll have to have maybe we'll get a salt expert on this week who can tell us all about it.
Maybe, that'd be a great idea.
That'd be very good.
Good thinking.
We are the Two Mics.
You're listening to the Two Mics on talkSPORT.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you still may be charged. We are the Two Mics. Got quite a few tweets here on your Ask Porky answers. One from Bob, who says that Liverpool answer was the best I ever heard on Ask Porky. Yeah. If only MG was that honest on such tribal football matters.
Really? Yeah.
What does he mean?
Well, I think he means that I was quite clear about it. You know, I've just played that song, by the way.
Yeah.
What's that song?
It's Footloose, isn't it?
Yeah. Why is that?
I don't know.
Because we're going to announce the result of the poll on flip-flops.
On flip-flops, yeah.
Which you wear on your feet, okay?
The poll has now closed.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we'll announce that in a minute.
All right.
In a minute. So you've got a few more responses, have you?
A few more, yeah.
Excellent.
Here's one from Davies. He says, Porky, why are you not speaking out about your friend Jazza Vine almost getting knocked out by a lady with red hair?
Well, we just have.
Well, we just have talked about it.
Yeah.
Why would he say that?
I don't know.
Yeah. And here's one from Derek. Another great quote similar from the HBO show The Wire. Life is what happens while you wait for moments that never come. That's a slight variation, isn't it?
Yeah, quite like that.
Quite like that.
Yep.
Ethan says, what time do I skip onto the podcast to actually listen to you two? Alan sounds as thick as Porky's fridge door.
Who?
I don't know who he means by that.
Alan? No idea.
No idea.
And that is my expression, by the way, thicker than the fridge door.
It is,
please don't start nicking those Parryisms.
Yeah, I know.
Or Porkyisms, actually.
Porkyisms, exactly right. Now, coming up tomorrow, of course, we've got Porky Vision, so I don't know whether you've had the opportunity to watch anything yet because of our busy schedule.
Yes,
but obviously,
I have.
You'll be spending a great deal of time betwing now and then actually doing it.
Oh, you bet. Don't
now, should
worry.
we not do this result while they're playing the Footloose music?
Well, I think we should do it now.
Otherwise, it's kind of disproportionately out of order, isn't it?
And the music's going on and on and
on.
It
is. Yeah. Right, the final result is the question. Mike Parry wants to ban flip-flops when worn in non-flip-flop situations. What do you think? 56% to 44% banned a lot of them.
Thank you.
So you've won another one.
Well, that's a very decisive victory as well, isn't it?
It is quite decisive,
Absolutely decisive, yeah.
Quite a few hundred people voting in that as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Only 44% say leave my flip-flops alone.
That's right,
So you've obviously managed some great influence on the listeners there.
Yeah, is this record getting on your nerves now? Because it's getting on mine.
It is a bit, yeah.
Thanks a lot. We'll look up that one. Thank you. That's it, yeah.
Yeah, you're not very tolerant of music going on and on and on, are you?
Well, it sounded like a rattle in the background eventually. But I'm very happy to praise our technical team.
Yes, I think they've done a great job.
Putting it in their first place. They've done a great job. Yeah.
Now, what about this? Porky, get yourself over to... I think they're saying get yourself over to talkSPORT where Liam Gallagher, Noel Gallagher's in. You can have a nice chat about Liam.
Oh, was he? Was he talking to our colleagues?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, of course.
Tomo says, surely salt is bad for someone with only 1/3 of his heart working.
Well, it is, but you can have everything in moderation. You've got to remember bladderation in moderation, saltification in moderation, and exercise, application in moderation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Now then, here we go. Getting ready to... I'm not sure what this is. This is from William, who's a regular correspondent. Had shower with water pressure very low so I could still hear the two mics.
Right.
I am one of the great unwashed, Porky. Well, you're not, William. You know, that's not fair. I don't call people the great unwashed.
Well, if there's not much point in having a shower if you've got the pressure turned down.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Why would you bother?
Don't know.
I actually washed the car today. You know, the old jalopy, which I've not washed for a very, very long time.
Did it fall to pieces?
It didn't fall to pieces. It looks great, actually.
Surprises me.
The reason I did get it washed was because when I left it outside over the weekend, unfortunately got sort of, shall we say, scattered by sort of bird droppings.
Hate all that.
So I thought, I've got to get rid of these.
Hate all that.
And it was great. Took it to one of these places where they did it for 10 quid.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the inside done because I had to move a load of stuff around, just the outside. It looks terrific.
Do you know that, I'm sorry, but bird deposit can be actually very dangerous?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
they strip the paint.
But yeah, they do. Yeah. They do. And I remember on one occasion... just leaving it too long, and when I came to sort of chip it off, so to speak, you know what I mean, by which time it needed chipping off, I marked the car, and I had to have the car repaired. It is the best thing you can do is get rid of it as quick as possible with a hot kettle, because a hot kettle will not damage the the coachwork of your car, but that stuff does.
Well, the coachwork, as you put it, on my car is probably not quite as important as the coachwork on your car, because
probably not.
My car is now like 15 years old.
Yes,
and so it's got quite a lot of marks on it, which I didn't make, by the way. But you're amazed how much better it looks just by having it just kind of washed and buffed up a little bit.
I tell you what, any car these days looks better when it's washed, and do you know why?
Yeah.
Because when the wheels are silver, as they should be, it makes the car look brand new.
Yeah.
And when the wheels are black through both the, that's on the front wheels these days because of disc brakes, it throws out this fine spray of like black fluid, actually. So about a week after you get it washed, they turn black anyway. Yeah. But the wheels at the back just get covered in like
just dirt,
stuff thrown up off the road. That's right. But I've got a metallic bodywork, right? And it looks great all the time, but it looks 2 years old when the wheels are dirty.
Do you remember that Aston Martin we saw last night that was completely covered in filth?
Amazing. Parked out in the Porky Towers Road.
Yeah.
And we got close to it.
Talk Sport Tower, talk Radio Towers, surely.
Oh, sorry, did I say Porky Towers? So that's where I live. That's right. I don't live here.
That's where you are.
I don't live here.
Well, it just seems like it.
That's right. Yeah. But in Talk Sport, Talk Radio Towers, there was an Aston Martin parked outside, and we both commented on it. But it was filthy. The bodywork is filthy. Now, to me, that means that the person who owns that car is wealthy.
Yeah.
Because if you're scraping, around to support yourself running an Aston Martin, one thing you do is you keep it immaculately clean all the time, because it's a fact of life that if it becomes a more prized possession, if you've had to struggle like mad, and not struggle, but I mean work very hard and get the money together to buy it. It's your pride.
But maybe he's got an ulterior motive for keeping it dirty because you don't know. I mean, it was a dark colour. I think it was a dark gunmetal grey or something. Quite a dark colour. So maybe if it's that dirty, people don't notice it and they won't try and nick it.
You can't nick an Aston Martin these days, I'm told. Yeah, I'm just told you can't because the computers are almost like sensitive to touch and all that kind of stuff. Right. You know what I mean? There will be one of these days, by the way. The windscreen on a car. Obviously, you look through it.
Yeah.
Well, for years, politicians like Ronald Reagan were able to read their speeches on words they could see on their side of the screen.
Didn't Aston Martin do this? Didn't they project the speedometer up onto the actual windscreen?
And you can still do all that. It's an optional extra you can take. But what I'm saying is, Ronald Reagan would stand there. You'd think there were just two blank screens on either side of him.
Well, you couldn't actually see the screens. All you could see was the sticks.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely right. And you thought it was some sort of security measure or something like that. In fact, the words were flying in front of his eyes. He was reading it. Now,
well, that's quite a skill in itself to be able to read them without showing that you're reading them.
Yeah. Now, when we went to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It didn't happen on the way back, but on the way there, going out of Gatwick Airport, at one stage you just had to stare at a camera.
Really? Oh, that's right. Yeah,
remember
for the retina thing.
Exactly, and that's what's going to happen. That's going to be incorporated in a chip in your windscreen.
Yeah. Do you know, I did that once, and I had to take a trip up to Glasgow.
Yeah.
And I've been out quite late the night before.
Yeah.
And I stood in front of that retina camera to go through security. And I stood there, and eventually this sign came up saying, "Please open your eyes." because my eyes were so kind of slit-like.
Oh, I see.
From having had quite a late
from
night.
your bladderation.
That I had to kind of pin them open for it to work.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, no, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's very interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Right, now then, something I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Do you ever go to 3D films?
Well,
Have you ever seen one?
Do you know, I've taken the kids to 3D films. In fact, a few years ago, we bought a 3D TV. Just because it seemed like that was the thing that everyone was buying. But I never actually watched anything on the television in 3D.
No.
Because they had 3D movies, but you'd put it on and it would be sort of, fish swimming around under the sea. It was quite interesting up to a point.
Sure.
And you put special glasses on, which you bought with the television.
Yeah.
But actually, after you'd seen a couple of them, you were like, well, that's fine, I've seen all that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, sometimes the kids and I go to the movies, and we went a couple of times to the 3D version, which is more expensive. Yeah. But actually not as good.
No.
The best thing about 3D movies in the cinema is actually the adverts. The adverts are great.
Really?
But the movies themselves are usually not very good.
I've never seen one because I don't wish to put on a pair of glasses that somebody else has just worn.
Well, they give you new ones.
Are you sure?
Yeah, they're brand new.
No, I think they're recycled.
And then you can keep them, right, and bring them back the next time. So you don't have to, if you remember to bring them each time, you don't have to buy them every single time.
Not sure about that. Anyway, the reason we're talking about this is because
They've banned them in China, haven't they?
My reports from China say that the government are going to ban them because people are literally being physically sick inside. And the film that apparently has been manufactured there to very high 3D standard is the Newborn film.
It's
called Jason Bourne?
That's right. Apparently, the fight scenes are so realistic and have been filmed so cleverly in 3D that they've actually been too realistic, and people have been going to see them suffering headaches and vomiting.
Yeah, I know.
As a result of watching it.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
One viewer on the Sina Weibo micro-blogging site says, I felt so dizzy and couldn't bear any more at the halfway point. I ran to the toilet and threw up for a couple of minutes. Another one said, I felt really sick during the fight scenes when I watched it in 3D.
Not good.
No.
I read a review today of somebody who, maybe your kids will be into this, I don't know. You put on a face mask and you go into a virtual reality experience.
Yeah.
But
this is Oculus Rift, isn't it?
It's what?
Is this the Oculus Rift thing?
What's that?
Well, it's the new sort of virtual reality game that's coming out in September.
Oh, I don't know. What this was, and it might be the same thing, is this person was terrified because you put on this mask, like a pair of old-style skiing goggles, okay?
That's right.
And then, and it was a woman who was reviewing it. She said, I was petrified because I was standing on the edge of the roof of the Chrysler building in New York, and if I'd take one step forward, I literally feared I was going to, fall hundreds of feet to my death.
Maybe we should let you try them out.
Not sure about that.
I don't think you'd like it, though. Well, we've been talking to a tech guy for a while, haven't we, over in various other shows that we've done, and they say the biggest problem they've got is that they're so realistic that they are actually frightening, and they do make people feel unwell. So they're actually working on how to make that better.
On another one, she was in the middle of the making of what was the first film with the dinosaurs on the island?
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, and literally threw herself to the floor as she thought she was about to be eaten by a dinosaur.
Right.
I mean, they're incredibly realistic, these things. And by the way,
I don't think I'd want to see that.
No, that can't do your head any good, can it? That can't. You have nightmares about that.
Well, how can you stop? Could you stop seeing it? I mean, if you go to bed and you're lying there in your various state of either nakedness or non-nakedness.
Absolutely.
What if you have a sort of flashback to it?
I mean, I wouldn't subject myself to
post-traumatic stress disorder.
I hate heights as well, so I'm telling you, that experience of nearly stepping off the roof of the Chrysler building, that would disturb me for weeks.
But what if you could step off it and then just kind of fly around?
Well, you can't. You can't if you step off it. You step off it.
Yeah, but you're in a virtual reality game and you can do anything you want.
Yeah, but you can't because she hadn't programmed this. Somebody programmed it for her.
Oh, okay.
And if you stepped off it, whoosh, you were going down.
Yeah.
Not for me.
No.
Not for me.
I think it's all new stuff coming out in September. So, we may have to get somebody on to talk about it.
Yeah,
and see if we can get you to try it out, even if it's not something quite as bad as that.
J'agree.
And do a little kind of running commentary. What do you think? So tomorrow we're coming up with what can only be described as Porky Vision.
Porky Vision tomorrow.
So we'll find out what that's all about. Also, of course, we'll be doing the Porky quiz. We have to pick a subject for the Porky quiz.
That's on Thursday.
That is on Thursday.
Yeah, okay. We'll pick a subject tomorrow, okay?
Yeah, okay.
You're listening to the Two Mics on talkSPORT.
This is a repeated programme, so please don't call the show as you won't get through, but you